Almagtige God, ons bid dat die gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat U ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan U op te dra. Sikelele elesbeletu nabantu balo, umusili ukulunga, kwipondu letu, nkosi sikelele I Afrika, Kina abantwana bayo, kokhele inkokele zayo, inike ikolo I Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. You may be seated. Order. I see the Chief Whip first.
Afternoon, Deputy Speaker. Notwithstanding Rule 198, precedence be given to the subject for discussion.
No objection. Agreed to. We will do the Speaker's debate first, and the first speaker will be the Speaker. I see the Speaker.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, honourable members, at the 30th African Union Summit held in January 2018, the theme, the African Anti-Corruption Year, Winning the Fight Against Corruption, a Sustainable Path to Africa's Transformation, was agreed upon. I will talk more about what was discussed at the summit a little later. On the 25th of May 1963, the first African organization after independence, the Organization of African Unity, was formed in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The organization was founded by 32 countries, and a further 21 countries have joined gradually over the years, with South Africa becoming the 53rd member on the 23rd of May 1994. In marking this day, Parliament celebrates the ideals of the African Union: cooperation, human solidarity, African consciousness, Ubuntu, and peace. Aspiration 3 of Agenda 2063 for Africa's transformation seeks to instill a universal culture of good governance, democratic values, gender equality, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. While Aspiration 4 recognizes that these values or principles are necessary conditions for a peaceful and conflict-free continent, Africa has yet a far way to go. The African Union, which has a responsibility for continental norm setting and has instruments to fight corruption. So far, 37 of the African Union members have ratified the AU's Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. The acronym is AUCPCC, which was adopted in Maputo in 2003 and enforced in 2006. Corruption clandestinely erodes the sound foundations of civil society. It derails decision-making and policy-making, thereby impeding sound social and economic development. In this sense, corruption is the most serious obstacle to democracy and sustainable development. The need to stop the hemorrhaging of Africa's scarce resources is crucial. Combating corruption frees the resources necessary to address the challenges facing the sustainable development of both urban and rural communities. Fighting this type of corruption will enhance the development of African people and to effectively invest in youth and ensure a youth dividend. And this is bearing in mind a Youth Day is around the corner. A 2016 Corruption Watch report indicated that the most prevalent types of corruption reported in the continent over the past few years center on abuse of power, followed by bribery, and then procurement corruption. When heads of government and heads of state met for the 30th session of the African Union Summit in Addis on the 25th of January, discussions around the theme of corruption took center stage. Ms. Vera Songwe, the Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa, said, and I quote, "Corruption has held Africa back for far too long, and it's time to nip the scourge in the bud. The injustice of corruption brought to life within our institutions is more powerful than any other injustice we as Africans could face, she said. But it is within our remit to repair this cancer. That is why I applaud the African Union for taking on this theme as the main battle cry of the Union for the next year, quote unquote. The Economic Commission for Africa says every year over $148 billion are drained out of the continent through various corrupt activities, representing about 25% of Africa's GDP growth. Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, in the introductory chapter of the concept note on the African Union said, and I quote, "A lot has been done over the last 15 years since the adoption of the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. Governments and non-state actors have raised awareness of the devastating effects of corruption on human rights, civil and political rights, social and economic rights alike. They have mounted advocacy campaigns to influence national, regional, continental, and global agendas demanding for systemic change. Working with a wide range of partners, they have adhered to globally accepted anti-corruption standards. They have developed innovative tools and approaches and carried out research to deepen the collective understanding of corruption and its many ugly facets. A lot more can still be done." End of quote. Consequently, the AU chairperson was calling on member states, regional economic communities, civil society organizations, together with citizens, women, men, young people alike, AU organs and all other stakeholders to work together in 2018 and beyond so as to lift the burden of corruption out of the lives of the millions of Africans affected, particularly the poor and marginalized groups in society. Among the common problems in Africa are unemployment, access to land, weak educational systems, gender discrimination, and poor healthcare systems. Add to that external dependency, a situation in which the world's poorest region overall is reliant on donors. Although considerable progress has been made globally in recent years to combat corruption, it continues to impede development whilst also undermining democracy and the rule of law. Deputy Speaker, the estimated cost of corruption in Africa is much higher than the total combined amount of development aid it receives. Corruption remains one of the biggest barriers to Africa's development as it negatively affects the delivery of basic social services and economic activities and hinders the investments in youth. Three principles that are, in my view, key to a successful fight against corruption are cooperation, coordination, and country ownership. In the spirit of leaving no one behind, African people, and South African people in particular, can combat corruption in diverse ways, using various means, including, but not limited to, exercising their civic and political rights in electing the right officials in office and holding them accountable, training as anti-corruption practitioners, holding integrity dialogues, and increasing political participation and supporting anti-corruption campaigns. We should encourage the right skilled people to elevate to more leadership roles locally, regionally, provincially, nationally, and internationally, and continue to advocate for transparency and accountability. Politicians could encourage their constituencies to document cases of corruption by developing reporting platforms on the web or through mobile apps. Social media in particular is an effective way to address corruption in real time. Recognizing that we all have a role to play is paramount, given the role we all play in changing attitudes and instilling cultural accountability. As noted above, there are a number of conventions, policies, strategies, and institutional frameworks to fight corruption in Africa. In order to win the fight against corruption, there is a need for ensuring that leaders match their words with actions, organizing for the transformation of society, reorientation to fight for social justice, equity, and societal transformation, organizing for change and linkages with other agents of change in society. While much has been done, we still have a far way to go. We can and should become the agents of change. Each one of us holds the power in the positions we find ourselves in. In closing, I would like to end with two quotes. The first one is by Martin Luther King, and it says, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." And the other one is by Edmund Burke. It says, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil..."
Order, member.
The only thing necessary for the triumph...
Order.
The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Order, the Honourable Minister of Cultural Affairs, Minister Marais.
Adjunct Speaker, as 'n trotse Suid-Afrikaner is dit inderdaad 'n groot plesier om deel te neem aan hierdie belangrike debat oor die bekamping van korrupsie as 'n volhoubare pad na Afrika se transformasie ter viering van Afrika Dag en om haar verhaal uit te lig. Korrupsie neem baie forme aan en vir die doel van hierdie debat gaan ek fokus op intellektuele korrupsie in my ontleding van gewilde internasionale persepsies van Afrika wat vandag nog bestaan. I share with you the idea of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who said, and I quote, "It is easy to romanticize poverty, to see poor people as inherently lacking agency and will. It is easy to strip them of human dignity, to reduce them to objects of pity. This has never been clearer than in the view of Africa from the American media, in which we are shown poverty and conflict without any context," unquote. Although prevalent in many parts of Africa, this common image does not do our continent justice. We have so much more to offer. Through her people and places, Africa oozes with natural beauty, diversity, excellence, a melting pot of cultures, and is the cradle of mankind and above all, resilience. As Africans, we all have a role to play in sharing the African story so that the world at large is aware of the realities of our continent. We need to make them aware of our achievements, our successes, our people, our food, our languages, our cultures, our everyday lives, because we're better to tell our stories than us. We're better to alert the world to the fact that Africa is home to 22 Nobel Prize laureates, over 2,000 languages, the concept of Ubuntu and daily living that calls it only in reality, and renowned world record holders in Caster Semenya, Wade van Niekerk, Chad Leclerc, and Paralympians to name only but a few. Wie is die beste toegerus om die negatiewe wêreldwye wanopvattings uit te daag deur die verrykende realiteite van Afrika uit te lig? Onsself, want ons is Afrikaner deur geboorte. Ons voorvaders het 'n verskeidenheid van Afrika erfenis en kultuurgeskiedenis nagelaat wat ons moet ontleed, uitlig, vier en vir toekomstige geslagte bewaar. Ek kan nie aan 'n meer effektiewe manier dink om ons Afrika-identiteit tentoon te stel as deur ons kuns, ons kultuuraktiwiteite en sportdeelname deur ons onvertelde verhale deur musiek, drama, dans, ons kookkuns, mode, literatuur en sport uitnemendheid te deel oor taalgrense heen. Using sport and culture affairs as tools to join the global conversation on Africa is central to our efforts at the Western Cape Department of Culture Affairs and Sport. We have made great strides in creating an enabling environment in which our constituents can thrive holistically. With our limited annual budget of just over 760 million, we have prioritized our investment in the youth by increasing access and participation in culture affairs and sport by funding organizations, increasing platforms for talent showcasing, and forging new innovative partnerships with others for greater opportunities to come into fruition. Deputy Speaker, together it is our duty to create an enabling environment through which our youth can thrive as ambassadors of the African story. Contrary to popular belief, we need to understand that we are not a people at risk, but rather a people with potential. Despite the many challenges, there exist praiseworthy initiatives in the streets of Africa, and it is long overdue that we showcase these life-changing efforts rather than only perpetuating our hardships, which ultimately maintains global stereotypical misconceptions. Our role is not only to liberate society once more, but to liberate the minds of society. As Africans, there is an urgency to be more proactive in transforming Africa's transformation. I end with the words of Barry Bittman. I quote, "When our hands connect with a drum, that vibrates with our energy, vitality, emotion, exhilaration, hope, sensitivity, giving, sharing, and unity, we become whole again," unquote. Deputy Speaker, guided by the rhythm of the African drum, we must aspire to inspire before we expire. Thank you.
Order. Honourable Magaka.
Deputy Speaker, thank you. We really appreciate the debate. The 25th May is celebrated as an African Day or as an Africa Day. It is a day in which OAU was formed by 32 independent African countries in Addis Ababa in 1963. Celebrations on this day recite the annual commemoration of Africa's independence, freedom, and liberation strive from colonial imperialism. Tomorrow, Africa will be celebrating 55 years of determined efforts for unity among the African people and socio-economic freedom from foreign domination and exploitation. We celebrate the deeds of Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Oliver Tambo, Kenneth Kaunda, and all other African heroes and leaders who took up the cause of advancing complete independence of Africa. African liberation cannot be celebrated in separation from independence of other oppressed nations or oppressed people around the world. We should not forget about the Palestinian people who are still oppressed by the apartheid colonial Israel regime. While African states will be pledging solidarity with the people of Palestine, the DA government in the Western Cape, in the southern part of the continent, will pledge its loyalty and support to the draconian Israel government, the most notorious and...
Order. Order, members.
The DA government in the Western Cape, in the southern part of the continent, will be pledging its loyalty and support to the draconian Israel regime, which is the most demonic and the most dangerous regime, toxic regime in the entire world. That is the very same government that only last week had mowed down innocent Palestinian civilians, women and children, thereby seeing over 60 people losing their lives on an important day of the return march. We must take this opportunity as members of this legislature to openly condemn in the strongest possible terms the killing of Palestinian people whose only sin is fighting for their land and self-determination. Africa cannot be free when Palestinians still oppressed and killed daylight. Africa Day falls in the month of May, which is celebrated as Africa Month. South Africa theme for Africa Month 2018 is a year of Nelson Mandela, building a better Africa and a better world. This theme is in line with the founding principles and values of OAU to help bring about change and freedom and restore dignity of African people. We must ask today, where is the dignity of African people in the Western Cape who are called refugees by the Premier and racial abused on a daily basis on Twitter and other
Order.
social media platforms? Where is their freedom when they live in squalor and unemployment?
Order.
In January 2018, AU declared 2018 as African Anti-Corruption Year under the theme, Winning the Fight Against Corruption, a Sustainable Path to Africa's Transformation. This is also the theme of today's debate. The anti-corruption theme of AU is linked with the Regional Anti-Corruption Program for Africa. This program gave birth to anti-corruption activities such as the AU Convention on Prevention and Combating Corruption, the Pan-African Body of National Anti-Corruption Institution, African Forum on Fighting Corruption, the Illicit Financial Flows Project, and other related projects. When we talk about corruption, we must first acknowledge that colonialism and apartheid were two of the most extreme forms of institutionalized corruption that the world has ever seen. Hence, the necessity to expropriate our land without compensation become very important. We also advise Premier Helen Zille that the next time she decides to praise the leaders of colonialism, she must know that this is actually praising grand corruption. Africa is now serious about fighting corruption. Africa leaders are determined to tackle corruption with the same vigor that the president of the ANC in South Africa is fighting corruption. Within weeks of his election into the office, the fight against corruption in the country started to show signs of gaining momentum. As we speak today, people who are implicated on corruption scandal are facing investigation led by the ANC government. Guptas have ran away. Cabinet has intervened in the Northwest to place all provincial departments and a number of municipalities under national administration to improve governance and to deal decisively with allegations of corruption. The ANC chief whip in the National Assembly clearly outlined the plans of how the ANC has dealt with corruption in recent past and moving forward. He told us that the boards of Eskom, Danel, Prasa, and Transnet have been replaced, and this state-owned enterprise are on new strategy of renewal. The president has appointed a commission of inquiry into the tax administration and government of the South African Tax Revenue Service. The Judicial Commission of State Capture will soon commence. You can clearly see that the political will to deal decisively with corruption is there. However, not the same can be said about the DA government in the Western Cape. They did nothing to deal with the corruption allegation in the city of Cape Town. They did nothing to deal with the corruption in the George municipality. They only issued a statement about the Hawks, started with the cleanup in that municipality. How can we forget the yes, we made mistake report by the public protector? Was there any official held responsible for corruption? What did the DA do when our Honorable Premier Helen Zille was exposed of pressurizing officials in the Western Cape government to boost his son's business? Why is
Member, your time has expired. Just finish off that sentence.
Why is the Premier still here if the DA is serious about fighting, including Paul Marais' business was boosted by support and contract from the government of his mother, Umamaka Tuzan?
Members, before we proceed, I just need to point out what Rule 143 says about this debate. The intention is that the topic should be non-political. It is non-political in a sense, but I understand that there could be some instances where politics must come in. But I want to appeal to members who must speak from now onwards to keep in mind the fact that this is not a political debate. This is a general debate on the topic of Africa and corruption. I've allowed the first speaker a little bit more latitude. He came back to the topic in the end, but he transgressed in the first part of his speech when he went to Israel and Gaza, which wasn't part of the topic here. I see the next speaker, the Honourable Dennis Joseph.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Africa Day is an opportunity to celebrate. calling ourselves sons and daughters of Africa. After many years of liberation struggle on the African soil against colonial rule by many foreign governments, the independence started to become a reality when Ghana gained independence 6 March 1957. This experience of Africa's first free country served as an inspiration to other countries. Ghana then convened the first Conference of Independent African States, 1958, a forerunner for the OAU, Organization of African Unity. Ghana is now one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, with Ethiopia, Cambodia, Senegal, Tanzania following. Out of the liberation movements, many leaders arose to the international stage, showing the rest of the world that Africa is a force to be reckoned with. Deputy Speaker, it is unfortunate to note that the colonial governments used the divide and rule tactics, leading to cultural wars, tribal wars, race wars, from which we are still suffering today. The history of traditional leaders, the Khoisan and the Griquas, and many Khoisan groupings were totally destroyed. Africa must rise, and the democratically elected leaders must rise up against leaders in Africa who cling to power using military force against their opponents, killing innocent citizens. Africa must rise against the leaders who do not protect women and children against abuse. South Africa was not excluded in the struggle for liberation on the continent, and the ANC as a liberation movement with many civil society organizations make significant sacrifices for our freedom. As a public representatives, we must rise against leaders who are corrupt and those who work for self-interest. With the same commitment that we showed against apartheid, and apartheid was a crime against humanity, and with the same commitment, civil society must take a stand against those who become an obstruction in building a democratic state, a capable state, and a country where all South Africans and our visitors can live in peace. Our first elected democratic president, Nelson Mandela, said in his inauguration speech, "Never, never and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another and suffer the indignity of being the skunk of the world." President Mandela was leading South Africa out of the valley of darkness. We must therefore act as united people for our nation, in reconciliation, for nation building, and the birth of a new world. Deputy Speaker, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, meaning that all our minerals, all our resources, all our wealth, all our skills, all our challenges belongs to all who live in it. The injustice of the past belongs to all of us. The inequalities that we still experience today belong to all of us. The equal opportunities that we all strive for belong to all of us. The better life for all belong to all of us. And the responsibility that is placed on our shoulders when we took oath belongs to all of us. Deputy Chair, our challenges of our young democracy is blessed in particular our beloved country. Deputy Speaker, of the land restitution, land reform, we remain united in our diversity. We remain committed to our constitution, that is the supreme law of our country. We remain committed to heal the divisions of the past, improve the quality of life for all citizens, and ensure every person is equal before the law. In closing, Deputy Speaker, to confirm how blessed Africa is, I draw the attention of this House to the song Plea for Africa, written by John Knox Bokwe. This song inspires us to give a thought to Africa, where there are weary hearts waiting to be won. When lips are moved by grace, they so sweetly sing the praise for Africa. The song, our own anthem, Kosi Sikaleli, a hymn written by Enoch Sotonga in 1897, meaning God bless Africa, God seën Africa. If we pay attention to the anthem, and our Africa will remain blessed, our leaders will be guided, and we will live in peace and harmony. I thank you.
Honourable Diana.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Africa Day is annually celebrated on May 25th throughout the world to commemorate the founding of the Organization of African Unity, OAU, now African Union, in 1963. Today, the Continental Organization celebrates 55 years of determined efforts for unity among the African people and socio-economic freedom from foreign dominion and exploitation. The African Union has made a strong point and an important commitment by announcing the 2018 theme, Winning the Fight Against Corruption. It is an approach to ensure a sustainable path to Africa's transformation. As the ANC, we would like to congratulate the African Union for dedicating the theme of the year to the noble cause of fighting corruption on our continent. We also welcome the strong ambition in Africa's Agenda 2063 and its vision for Africa's advancement. Under Agenda 2063, Africa under Aspiration 3 recognizes that corruption erodes the development of a universal culture of good governance, democratic values, gender equality, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. The United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development under Goal 16 calls on all countries to promote and develop accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels, notable by reducing bribery and corruption. In building strong national and regional institutions, the empowerment of our anti-corruption agencies and insulate them from political influence is most important in order to win the fight against corruption. Indeed, corruption is one of the greatest evils of our time. Corruption rewards those who do not play by the rules and also creates a system of distortion and diversion, thereby destroying all efforts at constructive, just and fair governance. As the ANC, we would like to welcome the initiative of putting in place legal and policy frameworks by the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption, hoping it will be implemented as soon as possible to desire successes in tackling corruption. It is evident that corruption has a devastating impact on marginalized communities, especially women, youth, and children. We need to work together to defeat corruption in the whole continent. Speaker, although Africa Day calls for unity and solidarity, as the ANC, we have noticed on several occasions that the Premier of the Western Cape Province does not display a sense of unity and cooperation. If we are serious about Africa Day, we must demonstrate our willingness to work together here in Western Cape, putting petty politics aside and working in the interest of our people. We must continue to respect and tolerate different cultures, races, genders, and languages. It is through appreciation of such differences that we learn to love each other, thus becoming a united, democratic, non-sexist, and non-racial province. On this day, wherever we may be, we should be proud of our identity as Africans and do nothing that brings shame and humiliation on ourselves, both as a province and as Africans. Through this day, we must raise awareness and consciousness around the world and as Africans. I would like to salute our African brothers and sisters across the world who are doing amazing things to promote Africa and all that it represents. As South Africans, there are some things we must
such as 6 for marks in academia or 6 for jobs or promotions witnessed in places of work. Other examples include early negotiated marriages, gender-based violence, delayed or denied justice, amongst others. The rights of women are being trampled on. We are seen as only good enough to satisfy the man's every need. How can we talk about transformation then, Deputy Speaker? We can only achieve a transformed Africa if women are seen as equal to men, if the rights of women are not trampled on, if women are also acknowledged like their male counterparts, if access to health and social services, as well as employment and other opportunities, is not a daily struggle for women. In July 2003, the Assembly of the African Union adopted the Maputo Protocol, as alluded to by the Speaker. Its official title is Protocol to African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa. By 2007, 43 of the 53 member states signed this document, thus binding them to ensure that women's rights are protected. The Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women, Article 2(1)b, provides that state parties must enact and effectively implement appropriate legislative or regulatory measures, including those prohibiting and curbing all forms of discrimination, particularly those harmful practices which endanger the health and general well-being of women. It also contains important provisions on reproductive rights, marriage, divorce, and inheritance rights, amongst others. The question then remains, Deputy Speaker, why are women still being discriminated against? Why are we not seeing equality for women on this continent? A 2016 article by Marika Shukla states that according to Transparency International and the World Bank, women's involvement in government is correlated with lower levels of corruption. Where you have a woman, you see change. And I want to quote just a few days ago, the recent Clean Audit report for this province, a case in point. In closing, I'd like to say that we as the Western Cape have an opportunity to showcase the strides that we have made in the provision of health and social services, as well as employment and other opportunities, and how we strive to ensure that women's rights are protected. This is extremely important, seeing that South Africa, as a member of the...
Thank you. The Honourable Sharon David.
Berlin Conference sometime in 1884. The conference was the formalization of the scramble for Africa. All the different countries in Europe decided they want a piece of Africa. Some take the north part, the east part, the west part, and so on. And they also make the boundaries in Africa. Now you take the Nile River, I take this part of Africa. For 20 plus years, various European powers explored, divided, conquered, and began to exploit virtually the entire African continent. It was a protected period of European powerhouses stealing and taking away the resources and land of the African continent, resources that were meant for Africa's development. What began in the Berlin Conference is still happening today. We can at least agree that this was one of the first cases of corruption in Africa, and that it was brought by Europeans. Relationship between underdevelopment and resource scarcity not only threatens the well-being, but also impact on the economic landscape. This is one of the reasons incidents and allow Africa to chart their own destiny. This was well captured in Haile Selassie's speech when he says, I quote, "We seek at this meeting to determine whether we are and go and to chart the courses of our own destiny. It's no less important that we know where we're coming from and where we are going. An awareness of our past is essential to the establishment of our personality and our identity as Africans." A close quote. When we look at Africa's underdevelopment and continuing exploitation, the outbreak of diseases and poverty level, we have to agree that it's not yet Uhuru. Such challenges also affect farm workers and black people in the Western Cape. Just yesterday, we read in the media of how DA municipalities collaborated with farmers to evict over 20,000 farm workers. It is not correct, and we cannot celebrate Africa Day when Africans are still subjected to slavery. Urban evictions in the Western Cape are the highest in the country. Last year, it was Bromwell Street families. This year, it's poor people in Naruna Estate. DA does not want poor people living near the CBD. Their places is in Pelican Park, where gangsterism is rife and where people don't have recreational facilities and schools for their children to learn and develop. When you look at such cases, you can clearly see through the DA's plan of further underdevelopment of African children. These are things we have to look at when we discuss Africa Day. Turning on to corruption now, Speaker, you made it very clear that this discussion is going about corruption. And when the DA speak, they only speak, yeah, ANC is corrupt, you steal everything. But Speaker, I want to bring it close to home to the DA today. Speaker, before we highlight what the ANC is doing to fight corruption, because Our speakers have said what the
member,
ANC is
order.
doing.
I gave some guidance in the beginning. This is not a party political debate, so I want you to skip that part and get to the
I'm
Africa
going there,
corruption.
Speaker.
Very
Thank
quickly.
you. Yes. Now it's time for the DA to tell us how did Gary Fisher, the advisor and ex-public works head in the province, end up in the prime position to benefit from 190 million sale of the Tafelberg school land in Sea Point. The DA must also tell us how it ended up doing business with a devious company like Falcon.
Order, member. That is now enough of that topic. I want you to carry on the Africa Day
No,
topic.
and there, Chief, is corruption.
Otherwise, you must conclude your
Chief, sorry, Speaker. Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, the Speaker...
Order.
Yes,
the topic
can I-
of the debate is Africa Day and corruption.
Yes.
I grant that.
This is Africa.
But it's also a non-political debate.
Yes.
So on the basis of being a non-political debate, I want you to heed that request.
Thank you for Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I just want to bring you back to what the Speaker said in her speech.
Fine, that's fine.
Yes, the Speaker said that this Africa Day is about corruption, it's about good governance, gender equality, rule of law, Africa transformation. Then she said that corruption that is happening in Africa, the Western Cape is part of Africa. We are part of South Africa, so we are part of Africa. And this is corruption, Chief, Deputy Speaker, that I'm bringing forward here. And then I want to go on with Africa. You know, we went on a visit.
Order. Allow the member the time to finish off his speech. The time has almost expired.
Angry. They just see the ANC is corrupt, but they are more corrupt, and they're cleaning it under the carpet. They're putting it under the carpet.
Order.
When it comes to gender, the Deputy Speaker, yes, the African Union is very strong on gender. And I want to bring it to the Speaker. I want to say thank you for the Speaker for this discussion. But Speaker, we really now...
Order, Honourable Mitchell.
Can you protect...
And the backbench behind the Honourable Davids. Please, Honourable Makaleni, allow your member to continue. Honourable Davids, you may continue.
The Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I want to say to the Speaker, if the Speaker can just bring the gender equality to home, here where we are. Because every time when there's issues, you can see in the DA when they do deployment, they don't do gender equality. I want the Speaker to stand up in the DA caucus and say, from now on, we're going to do gender equality. I thank you.
Order. I see the Honourable Minister of Health, Minister Mbombo. Order.
The Honourable Premier,
Minister, just 1 second.
members of the
Before
House,
the Minister starts, I want the House to come to order, please. You may now start, Minister.
the members of the House, Medach, Jambo, Ojodada in Western Africa, Masikati in Shona, Mwaswera in Malawi, and Assalamu alaikum in this period of Ramadan to the Muslim community on the commemoration of Africa Day. Deputy Speaker, thanks from the Madam Speaker for initiating this debate. Africa Day is about celebrating unity in diversity in Africa. And the focus of my debate today is to pick a leaf on lessons to learn from the work of the African Union, as the other speakers have alluded to in terms of the genesis of it. Deputy Speaker, time permitting, I would have wanted to go back to a time when the AU or AAU, since its inception in 1963, elected a woman for the first time in 2012 as its chairperson, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, a South African, noting that South Africa only became a member of the AU in 1994, following the end of apartheid rule. You may recall that the continent pronounced then at the time that Africa is not ready for a woman to take that position. So we came too far to be fighting a patriarchal system in order to recognize women as leaders in their own right. As for a continent where women make up a majority of the labor force, indeed, kusekude. I would have wanted also to go back to the time when Dr. Dlamini Zuma spearheaded and launched Agenda 2063, which is a long-term vision for African development, projecting where Africa should be in 50 years. But due to time, allow me to zoom in on the AU 2015 annual theme. I quote, Year of Women's Empowerment and Development towards Africa Agenda 2063. I want to remind the House that women's rights as an AU theme was launched actually twice in succession of each summit. And furthermore, the AU prioritized public health by launching the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, a public health agency to respond to public health emergencies on the continent. All this, Deputy Speaker, reflects a dedication by Africa to her women and public health. Women's issues unite Africa. Women's issues divide Africa. They are so important on paper and yet get delayed and left behind when it comes to implementation of interventions to emancipate women. We are a continent with a high gender-based violence, rape, female genital mutilation, deaths from avoidable illegal abortions, and the increasing rate of HIV/AIDS infections. We are a continent that is a hub for human trafficking of their children for the underworld. We promote child marriages where our girls are sold, mostly to older men, in the name of marriage. Africa is a continent where widows are left eating crumbs, whilst the men, as head of households, get the inheritance that is meant for the family in the name of cultural and traditional issues. Africa is a continent where the LGBTIQ+ community get killed for choosing for different family and sexual orientation. This is the continent where more than 200 girls were abducted from the school in broad daylight, were made slaves by community leaders and men who are as old as their fathers. Africa, a continent that kills their own children for muti because of lack of melanin in their skin, the albinism. It is in my continent where political leaders often become permanent country leaders and fight to remain in power for life so they can continue to steal and enrich themselves with the state money meant for the poor. South Africa is not exempted from the state corruption. The inequality gap is getting wider, and the face of poverty is a black African woman. On the commemoration of Africa Day, I want to remind this House that Africa does have the tools, wealth, and means to curb the above mentioned. We produce over 60% of the world's cocoa. We have mineral resources and natural resources, among others. All we lack is a political will, and also our flaws is about corruption. Deputy Speaker, let me qualify this with examples with specific reference to health and human rights of the vulnerable population. We do have policies and human rights instruments, yet these don't translate into effective, better outcomes for women. Number one, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which was adopted in 1986, resulted into Africa Human Rights Day on the 21st of October. And as we know that when it comes to human rights approach, it aims to protect individuals from abuse of state power, thus obligating the state to provide the conditions necessary for prosperity and well-being. The African Charter compels African member states to take the necessary measures to protect the health of their countries, ensuring that people receive medical attention. Deputy Speaker, the question, to what extent are we responding to that call? And the second thing is that within the AU, we have got a special rapporteur on rights of women, which was established in 1998, also using strong tools in the name of legal instruments. Marking the celebration of International Women's Day in March 2018 under the theme Press for Progress, the special rapporteur commended itself for the tremendous progress that has been made and mentioning a long list of policies, but yet little progress that has been made in the emancipation of women. Honorable members, the year 2018 is the end of African Women's Decade. The continent will sign again another piece of paper to declare their dying commitment to emancipate women for the next 10 or 20 years from 2019. Commitment doesn't translate to compliance, nor to political commitment. We need women empowerment programs now. Research shows that majority of poor women on the continent assign a high value to motherhood and reproduction, irrespective of socioeconomic circumstances and conditions. Access to economy and reducing the gap of economic inclusion of women by the state are among of interventions required for women to make informed decisions about their own lives. Deputy Speaker, zooming to health services, Africa's human rights instruments same as the SADC protocol, are clear on access to quality services and the right to health. Just to explain what we mean by the right to health, it's not to be understood as a right to be healthy. The right to health contains both freedoms and entitlements. However, if you look at the healthcare in Africa, it is disadvantaged compared to the rest of the globe. Sub-Saharan Africa has over 25% of the world's burden of disease, but only has 3% of the world's healthcare professionals. And one of the contributory causes is a brain drain through the catastrophic World Trade Agreement signed by our own state leaders. And to overcome the burden of disease, Africa is known for its innovative ways of delivering health services through patient empowerment, by training patients and communities to be carers to sustain the ailing health system. Community activism, patient education, social marketing are some examples of strengthening the health system in some parts of Africa. African innovation seeks to harness community resources. It's about doing with less for more, because there's nothing more left. Deputy Speaker, the last one of the two that I want to brag about is the South African Constitution, which is regarded as the most progressive one in the world. We must celebrate this flagship for Africa. As the member of the executive that presides over health in this province, I am most intrigued by the Section 27 of our Constitution, which provides the right of access to health services. The Constitution gives us, the government, an obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill the rights of citizens to access quality health care. And lastly, Deputy Speaker, the continent, whilst I'm still boasting, boasts itself on Ubuntu values which purport unity, communitarianism, a whole-of-society approach to help one another on virtue that we are human beings. The Ubuntu is explained through the proverbs such as, a thumb working on its own is useless. It has to work collectively with other fingers to get strength and to be able to achieve anything. So, Deputy Speaker, to what extent do we espouse these values, specifically on how we treat our own vulnerable population? If indeed we purport the continent as a place of Ubuntu, where people are united and show respect and compassion for each other, here in this legislature, we should be able to mirror such values. Are we? If indeed Ubuntu matters, we should be having a corrupt-free state, a state that doesn't steal from the poor. We should provide public services that show respect and dignity, as is required in the African culture. Lastly, in conclusion, Africa Day commemoration should be a stark reminder that the Constitution, African human rights charters, the treaties, and legal instruments are living documents which seek to hold us, duty bearers and government, to account to the people. On a day like this, it warrants renewal of our commitment to the hard-fought freedom and to stay true to unity in diversity. To the public out there, you have the tools to make us, politicians, governments, to account. Fire us when we lack a political will to commit and comply. Nothing about you without you. Asante sana.
Thank you, Minister. Now, Speaker Fernandez to reply.
Honourable Deputy, growing economies of the past decade are in sub-Saharan Africa. Across Africa, corruption, though, is an entrenched conduct, particularly by public sector officials, in which they improperly and unlawfully enrich themselves or those close to them by misuse of public power entrusted to them. Of course, private sector corruption is also a problem which needs to be stamped out in an equally aggressive manner. As the world remembers the passing of global icon Nelson Mandela, whose 100th birthday we will be celebrating this year, the fact that he was a man of principle is a clear element of his success as a leader and overall greatness. He understood the vital importance of the constitutional principles of accountability and the rule of law. He not only said as much, but he also demonstrated the courage of his convictions by submitting himself before the courts when summoned to defend his decisions to set up a commission to investigate alleged racism, corruption, and nepotism in South African rugby. Ironically, it was on this day, the 24th of May 1994, that Tata Nelson Mandela gave his first address to Parliament as the President of South Africa. It is therefore saddening to see how far some have strayed from the example set by this great man. Public funds are being diverted away from the public good towards private interest. In South Africa alone, we are currently ranked at number 72 out of 175 countries and heading downwards. But this we can change. South Africa also has dedicated policies, standards, and legislation specifically designed to enable the state to tackle corruption through both criminal and civil action. We also have a sound constitution. I am hopeful and believe that South Africa is better placed than many other African countries to tackle this problem. There are 13 public sector agencies that have a particular legal or policy role to play. Moreover, a number of national mechanisms, such as the National Anti-Corruption Task Team, have been established to coordinate the functions of these agencies. African Union members have also ratified the AU's Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. South Africa is playing an important leadership role in the African Union because of the rights and freedoms it has. South Africa has been very active in many conflicts on the continent and is always looking for a peaceful solution. However, if we want to break the back of corruption, it does require political will. I therefore believe, though, Deputy Speaker, that together we can win the fight against corruption, moving Africa forward. I thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of this debate, which I think we can all agree it was well-researched speakers and speeches on all sides. Thank you for that. We move on to interpellations on the question paper. The first interpellation is in the name of the Honourable Minister Grant, Transport. Minister Grant.
Deputy Speaker, thank you to Member Nana for raising the important issue of the negative impact on this province of poor delivery of the commuter rail service. While it is my intention to couch my response in broad economic and not political terms, I must upfront state that the legal succession to the South African Transport Services Act clearly vests ownership of PRASA in the national government. PRASA operates under a board appointed by the National Minister of Transport. In recent times, the entity has been beset by accusations of corruption and has received significant attention from the public protector. The failure to fill senior management posts on a permanent basis has added considerably to its shortcomings. The commuter rail network in the Western Cape consists of 610 kilometres of PRASA track operated by Metro Rail, with services to Worcester and Malmesbury operated on a concession basis on the Transnet lines. All services tend towards central Cape Town, with the following service groups offered: the Belleville line east-west, including Belleville, Wellington, Stellenbosch and Strand; the Metro Southeast or Bonteheuwel line, southeast to Mitchells Plain, Khayelitsha and Chris Hani; the Cape Flats line, north-south to Retreat via the Cape Flats; Simonstown line, north-south to Retreat and Simonstown; and then finally Worcester and Malmesbury services, daily north and northeastern services. In addition, the commuter network includes 116 stations. In recent years, or should I say decades, the challenges of undercapitalization, poor security, vandalism, and an inability to collect fares efficiently have taken their toll. As a result of increasingly erratic and unsafe service, rail passenger volumes have decreased dramatically since 2000, from a high of approximately 675,000 daily commuters. The potential passenger numbers and the extent of the network confirms that the rail service is an important mode of transport for the region. Properly functioning, the service provides a critical lifeline for the poor, providing affordable access to opportunities and services to those living in far-flung residential areas and helping to bridge existing spatial divides. Generally, rail is the most efficient and cost-effective means of transporting large volumes of people or goods over a range of distances. This is particularly so when operating along corridors with concentrated origin and destination points, such as the high-volume commuter trunk routes we have in Cape Town. Rail derives this strength from its ability to transport large volumes with low marginal cost, as most of the costs associated with rail are fixed. In addition to lower costs for high volumes, another key characteristic of rail is that it offers significant socio-economical and environmental benefits over road-based transport alternatives, including the potential to support highly efficient urban forms and transit-orientated development.
Honourable Janke, order, don't preempt me. Mr. Grant, your first opportunity has expired. We'll give you some injury time at the end again. Honourable Dugmore, before you start, you've got 2 slots running consecutively, so you will get 3 minutes instead of 2. In the absence of Honourable Inana.
Sorry, Deputy Speaker, can I just get clarity? So I can speak for 2 and then 1, but I must speak together now for 3 minutes.
Yes. There won't be, unless we allow the Minister to, do you prefer the Minister to say something in the beginning, in the middle as well?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I think it's common cause where Metro Rail is located. It's common cause that there have been serious issues with PRASA. But what we thought the MEC was going to come here today was to tell us more. He announced with much fanfare, at least, that he has established a task team. But I want to be serious. I mean, this should be welcomed. I'm not undermining the fact that even though the MEC doesn't have the direct powers, and we know that he initiated a task team. We've asked previously, when has the task team met? What are the terms of reference? How are they linking up with national? But our standing committee has not received that information. So I think it's very important that we move from a perspective about a broken PRASA. PRASA is broken. We must accept that, and we do accept that. And no one should come to this House and try and explain or justify that brokenness. But all of us, according to our code of conduct. So I would like to ask, we know that the MEC has got a close relationship with the city, with Brett Herron. I'm really not sure whether they're in the same caucus or not, but that's not important. The issue is that the Metro Police No. Okay. The point is that the Metro Police really, and that's what we would expect from MEC Grant and Brett Herron, to put those internal caucus differences aside and to actually bring in the Metro Police to work with the South African Police. The cable theft is a huge issue. Secondly, we must put on record that the devolution of powers to the regional management of Metro Rail really must be facilitated. You cannot have regional managers trying to run Metro Rail in Joburg or in PE or here, having to write 5 letters to PRASA, to get permission to procure something. That is simply wrong. It's unacceptable, and definitely from our side as the ANC, we want to push for that, and we want to support our National Minister and MEC Grant in trying to achieve that. The MEC has talked about, Deputy Speaker, 610 kilometers of rail. We had an example where we could actually, and this is the proposal of the ANC, look at the expanded public works program. Obviously, the province has got certain numbers of EPWP opportunities, the national as well as CBOs. If we mobilize communities, community members, military veterans, and others, and actually gave them responsibility for certain sections of the line, so that those communities would physically patrol and protect, we are convinced that that kind of mass ownership of the rail, because it's people's children, it's workers, it's many people, middle-class members of our society. All of us, over 300,000 people are effectively using this rail. So can we not, MEC, consider sitting down together and looking at the possibility of an expanded public works program involving communities? You mentioned 116 stations. Couldn't some EPW people, Metro Police and others actually have a physical, because people are scared. People are fearful about their safety. People are obviously worried about trains that don't arrive. I think this, like education, is one of those issues where, despite all the drama and the implosion that is going on in the city, not to make light of that, because when you have implosion, it does impact on governance. And I want to appeal to the DA, can you please try and sort out those internal divisions, because those are actually impacting on the ability to sort out the problem.
Member, your time has expired. Minister Grant to respond.
Deputy, impacts are equally wide-ranging. I want to thank the Honourable Dugmore for his contribution, and I've made notes of it. There is no dissension between us and the city, and there is no dissension between us and the new National Minister or his predecessor. There's none. So the bottom line is, in fact, it's very ironic, Honourable Jantjie, that the new National Minister, last Tuesday afternoon, after the Public Works debate, came up to me personally in the National Assembly and asked, would I partner with him to fix PROS in the Western Cape? And I said, with the greatest of pleasure, we will do it. So that debunks all the chattering, yes, he knows me well, from education days. Right. So we need to find a resolution in order to minimize the economic impacts, which are the inability of people to reach places of employment on time with a minimum lack of productivity, the increased transport costs to commuters if rail is not available on either buses or taxis, because rail is still the cheapest form of transport. Reputational damage to Cape Town in terms of tourism. This is a lovely network if it's used properly and it's safe and reliable. The additional strain on the remaining public transport. Then there are the environmental impacts. There's increased air and noise pollution due to an increase in vehicular modes, increased use of fossil fuels, more rapid deterioration of the road infrastructure, and obviously what we suffer with every day, increased traffic congestion. Then you've got the quality of life, wasted travel times. These have social impacts that affect quality, family time, stress levels, and the incidence of road rage. Increase in road traffic could also lead to an increase in the number of road safety incidents. Only in recent times are research studies being undertaken to quantify the impact of a poor commuter rail service in the Western Cape. However, the travel pressures of the daily lives of hundreds of thousands of people, the congestion on our roads, and the chaos which results from interruptions to any other form of public transport confirm the extent and depth of this impact. Tremendous effort has been expended in interactions with PRASA and Metro Rail and the previous and current National Minister of Transport in an attempt to encourage the national government to implement measures that will arrest the ongoing deterioration and lead to an improvement in this critical public service. Despite these initiatives, the system continues to deteriorate for the reasons I've mentioned, and those are vandalism, economic sabotage, undercapitalisation, and poor corporate management of PRASA. The challenges facing commuter rail remain a considerable concern to my department, but we will continue to engage with the management structures in PRASA, Metro Rail, and the City of Cape Town, seeking practical solutions to the current challenges and will support in every way possible
Order.
PRAS's turnaround strategy.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired now. That disposes of the interpellation. We move on to questions for oral reply. A new question to the Premier from Honourable Chacham. I see the Honourable Premier. Question number 1.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I think I know what the Honourable Chacham is getting at in his question. Well, if I answer it, I would say none. If I answer it, I would say none. But what he's saying is how many persons who have already retired are employed by the provincial government. Now, when people are already retired, they're not employed by the provincial government as far as I know. But I think the question is aimed at how many people who are of retirement age have had their services retained. And that is a fundamental difference. It's not a grammar. It's not a grammar. It's the meaning of words. Because to be retained is quite different from being re-employed. And that is a very important distinction. But anyway, I have assumed that he means how many people have been retained, and I'm answering on that basis. The corporate...
Order. Let me make
The Corporate Services Centre informs me that the number is 897. This includes information sourced from the Departments of Education and Health. Of these, 85% are educators, and together education and health make up 97% of this number.
No further follow-ups. Can we move on? We move on. Is there a follow-up? Honourable Chacham.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker.
Order.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thanks, Premier, for the colonialism lecture, because we are taking us back there. That colonialism was better for this and this. That's why other people know English.
Order, Honourable Chacham. I'm waiting for the follow-up question.
The question, the question, Deputy Speaker, I would want to know why are we retaining retired people or supposed to be retired people in the service when we have a large number of unemployed people who are skilled and understand what needs to be done.
Thank you. Premier.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the words in a question are very important because I take legal advice, and in fact the legal advice that the law does not deal with the re-employment of retirees, but rather retaining...
Premier, just 1 second. There's a... Honourable David? Is that a question?
No, it's a point of order.
Premier, just take your seat for a moment.
Not on the Premier, on the Chief Whip. Comrade Siyazi was speaking, and then the Chief Whip there made a bad remark about blood on his head and all of that. Is that parliamentary, Chief? And then all of them were laughing.
I did not hear the remark. Can I get back to Hansard? And if there's a derogatory remark, I will come back to the House. Premier, you may continue.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the wording of questions is very important because the law in terms of which this kind of thing happens has specific wording. And the law refers to re-employment, not retention. I mean, retention, not re-employment. And re-employment is a completely different concept, but I'm sure, and especially from the Honourable Member's follow-up question, he meant retention. So that is what I am now referring to. But I can't answer his follow-up question because in the law and in the regulations, this power to retain the services of people beyond the age of 65 is delegated, specifically in each department where the decisions on the retention of service, those decisions are made at delegated level. So I'm not in a position to answer that question.
Thank you, Premier. We move on. Honourable Chacham, another one.
Premier, just to ask, in your department in particular, how many people and who and why they are still there in your department?
Premier.
I can answer the first two of those questions, but not the third, because I did not specifically take the decisions, because, as I said, the decisions are delegated. But anticipating that that might well be a follow-up question, out of the 897 people whose services have been retained throughout the government, including health and education, and as I have said, by far the majority are educators, and education and health make up 97% of the 897, but of the 897, as I understand it, 3 people are in the department of the Premier. And they are someone called Dr. Gosard, and someone called Ms. Davids, and Dr. Stechman.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next question? Question standing over from Thursday the 10th. First one, Honourable Dugmore to Minister Marais. Minister Marais.
Thank you, Honourable Dugmore, for this question. Prior to 2016, the department was approached by the Western Cape Education Department to recommend projects relating to sport facilities at schools, upon which the department recommended, amongst others, the proposed sport facilities at the Glendale High School. Thereafter, I met with Glendale High School and was accompanied by our departmental Deputy Director, School Sport, to discuss the proposed project at the Glendale High School. As our department does not have the mandate to pronounce on sport facilities at schools, the matter was referred to the Western Cape Education Department. Although the Western Cape Education Department holds the purse for school facilities, we are collaboratively trying to work on a shared facility model so that more than one school benefits from a track or all athletic stadium. Requests of this nature should then be directed to the Education Department, as it falls outside of the Department of Culture Affairs and Sport mandate and budget, which financially supports municipal facilities in the province.
Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and to the MEC for her positive response. I would like to ask as a follow-up question, given that the Run for Schools project, the Dutch government, the Lotto, who have already contributed 1 million towards this, have all indicated and also approached your office along with myself. Given that we have this partnership, would you be able to engage with your colleague, the MEC for Education, sitting next to you, and possibly convene a meeting, including, of course, the Mitchells Plain Titans Athletics, the Stragglers Athletics Club, who are also supporting us in this initiative? Would you be prepared to speak to the MEC and possibly convene a meeting, including obviously Western Cape Athletics, Western Province Athletics, to actually look at building a true partnership that can serve the community of Mitchells Plain?
Minister.
Thank you. I've already spoken to my colleague next to me, and I'm prepared to convene a meeting and we can have a discussion. Thank you.
Honourable Dugmore.
Very much. Will you also be prepared to invite Ilana Meyer, who's also one of the people supporting this project, who, as you know, broke the world record in Oslo and has her own coaching facility at Stellenbosch? Would you also be prepared to invite her to attend?
Definitely, I would also be inviting her and everyone that can contribute to this, because this is the best for our children. Thank you.
Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you. Also, with our assistance, be prepared to invite the National Minister of Sport.
No problem. If she brings, we will invite her. Thank you. Thank you.
Honourable Dugmore, your last opportunity.
Okay. My last question would be that would you then, once this world-class athletics track is actually set up, be prepared to have a 400-meter dash between you and the colleague next to you and other members of this House to actually have a race.
Definitely, but then you must also participate. Thank you.
We move on to the next question. Question 2, standing over from Thursday. Minister Murray, I'm looking again at you. Honourable Mackenzie to Minister Murray, the second question. Minister, you may respond.
Nou, dankie, agbare Mackenzie, vir die vraag. Die herdenking van erfenis vorm 'n integrale deel van die bou van 'n inklusiewe nasie, iets wat die Departement van Kultuursake en Sport baie graag wil vermag. Die Rocklands Burgersentrum het 'n belangrike historiese betekenis in Suid-Afrika, veral die Wes-Kaap. 'n Vergadering is op hierdie perseel op 20 Augustus 1983 gehou en hierdie vergadering het aanleiding gegee tot die stigting van die Verenigde Demokratiese Front of die UDF en het ontwikkel in 'n massa-organisasie wat apartheid beveg het. Ten einde die historiese struktuur van die Rocklands Burgersentrum te herdenk, het Erfenis Wes-Kaap 'n openbare entiteit van die Departement van Kultuursake en Sport hierdie terrein op 22 September 2017 as 'n provinsiale erfenisterrein verklaar ingevolge artikel 27 van die Wet op Nasionale Erfenishulpbronne, nommer 25 van 1999. Provinsiale erfenisterreine is plekke wat spesiale eienskappe het wat hulle betekenisvol maak in die konteks van die provinsie of streek. Die Rocklands Burgersentrum word as belangrik beskou in die erfenis van die Wes-Kaap omdat hierdie terrein die krag van 'n verenigde menslike poging teen teenspoed demonstreer. Op 20 Augustus 2018 sal die departement 'n provinsiale erfenisterrein wapen en 'n vertolkende gedenkplaat onthul om die belangrikheid van die Rocklands Burgersentrum uit te lig.
Agbare Mackenzie.
Baie dankie, minister. Hoe sal die minister hierdie gebeurtenis op die 20 Augustus adverteer en hoe sal dit bevorder word na die breër Mitchells Plain en na die breër Kaapse gemeenskap?
Dankie. Ek sal en saam met ons media sal ons die media uitnooi, die groter gemeenskap en die aangrensende gemeenskap en ons sal ons beywer om die betekenis van hierdie gedenkplaat en die Rocklands Burgersentrum te bemark en ook by monde versprei nuus baie vinnig.
Agbare Mackenzie, tweede kans.
Dankie, minister. Gegee die belangrikheid van die Rocklands Burgersentrum na die geskiedenis van Mitchells Plain, hoe kan ons werkskepping deur middel van hierdie inisiatief bevorder?
Kultuurtoerisme sal definitief bevorder word en dit gee 'n geleentheid dan weer vir toerismegidse, sowel as storievertellers en dan die Rocklands Burgersentrum kan ook gebruik word vir funksies wat dan ook 'n diensverskaffer sal benodig. Okay.
Agbare Dagmore, wou jy 'n vraag gevra het?
Ja, minister.
Ek sien net Agbare Dagmore eers, dan sal ek terugkom.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd just like to ask the MEC whether she would also be prepared to invite the UDF veterans and comrades to this particular event.
Minister Murray.
Dit sal dit is as vanselfsprekend dat hulle genooi sal word. Ja.
Honourable Mackenzie, the last opportunity.
Dankie, minister. Minister, hoe kan hierdie as 'n kulturele toerisme in Mitchells Plain geadverteer word? Bemark word.
Kyk, die departement sal amptelik erkenning gee aan Rocklands Burgersentrum met hierdie gedenkplaat en dan ook vir die werklike betekenis wat dit gehad het en nog steeds gaan hê, sal dit bemark word as 'n kern vir deel van ons geskiedenis en ook vir ons toekoms.
Dankie, ons gaan voort. Question number 3 will stand over. Question 4, Honourable Eis to Minister Bredell. Minister Bredell.
Deputy Speaker, en dankie aan die agbare lid vir die vraag. Die Swartland munisipaliteit het wel 'n aantal 13 goedkeurings vir sandmyne, grysgroewe in hul munisipale gebied uitgereik. Die grondwet van die Republiek van Suid-Afrika 1996 wet 108 van 1996 verleen die bevoegdheid aan munisipaliteite om besluite oor aansoeke vir sandmyne te neem en word sodanige aansoeke in terme van die Swartland munisipaliteit se verordeninge op grondgebruiksbeplanning 2017 goedgekeur. Aansoeke word hanteer as 'n vergunningsgebruik. Aangeheg is 'n lys, so ek het 'n lys hier van die 13 aansoeke wat die munisipaliteit goedgekeur het. wat bestaan uit die eiendomsbeskrywing, die eienaarskap, die datum van die goedkeuring. En dan net vir kennisname ook die myn van sand vereis ook 'n omgewingsgoedkeuring vanaf die Nasionale Departement van Minerale en Hulpbronne in terme van die Nasionale Wet op Omgewingsbestuur 1998, Wet 207 van 1998. Dankie.
Agbare eis.
Baie dankie, Adjunct Speaker. Ek wil net vir die LER vra, is daar enige beplanningsgoedkeuring nodig vir enige sandmyning wat plaasvind binne 'n munisipaliteit? En wie gee sodanige beplanningsgoedkeuring?
Dus wat ek nou net geantwoord het. Die munisipaliteit het die reg volgens die grondwet om die vergunningsgebruik te doen, maar daar is ook 'n omgewingsgoedkeuringsmagtiging wat minerale en energiesake moet gee.
Agbare eis.
Dankie, Adjunct Speaker. LER, kan u dan verduidelik artikel 53 van die Wes-Kaapse LUPA, wat baie duidelik is dat munisipaliteite nie daardie goedkeuring mag gee nie, veral waar dit 'n impak op die landboubedryf het.
Landbou het die munisipaliteit het die mag om die besluit te neem. En in die proses het landbou kommentaar gelewer, spesifiek as ek dink aan die een waarna die agbare eis dalk verwys, en hulle terminaal het gesit en die terminaal het die appelle van die hand gewys en die myn is goedgekeur.
Agbare eis.
Baie dankie, Adjunct Speaker. Adjunct Speaker, waarom het die LER se departement dan aan 'n maatskappy met die naam van BKL Sandmine CC 'n brief geskryf om te sê dat hulle onwettig sand myn?
Ons is besig met een omgewingsbestuurstelsel en ons probleem is dat ons departement se kommentaar is nie in berekening gebring toe die Nasionale Departement van Minerale en Energiesake 'n lisensie uitgereik het nie, en dit is waaroor die hofsaak gaan.
Die laaste geleentheid in die eis.
LER, u weet baie goed dat dit nie omgewingsaangeleentheid is nie, maar beplanningsaangeleentheid, en wil juist vra, waarom skerm u vir die munisipaliteit van Swartland waarvan u 'n inwoner is, nadat hulle onwettig opgetree het en onwettig goedgekeur het?
Agbare Deputy Speaker, ek skerm vir geen munisipaliteit nie. Ek het dit baie mooi uitgespel, die munisipaliteit het die mag om die grondverbruik aansoek te hanteer. Dis wat hulle gedoen het. Die omgewingsaansoek voel ons dat ons kommentaar is nie in aanmerking geneem oor mineraal en energiesake met die toekenning van die lisensie nie, en dit kan 'n geweldige impak hê op toekomstige aansoeke, want ons het juist die een omgewingsstelsel geskep om vinnige besluite te neem, maar dan moet al die instansies se kommentaar in berekening gebring word. Wat gebeur is, persoon sal 'n aansoek indien by ons vir ons EI-aansoek, dan doen hy dieselfde tyd aansoek vir minerale en energiesake vir 'n lisensie. Dan reik hulle die lisensie uit, dan trek hy sy omgewingsaansoek terug, en dis waaroor die beklei tans met ons in die hof is met die.
Thank you. We move on to the next question. Question 5, Honourable Dugmo to Minister Bradell about the Philippi horticultural area.
Agbare Deputy Speaker, ingevolge reël 61 van die standaard reëls van die Provinciale Parlement van die Wes-Kaap, wat goedgekeur is in Februarie 2014, mag geen lid na enige saak wat sub judice is verwys nie, aangesien die saak huidiglik hangend is in die Wes-Kaap Hooggeregshof. Die saaknommer is 16779/17. Mag ek dus nie oor hierdie saak bespreek nie. Dankie.
Honourable Dugmo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I would appeal for you to make a ruling here. This question is a very simple question, which is whether the MEC is opposing. We are not talking about the merits of this case. My understanding of the sub judice rule is that one clearly cannot reflect on a pending matter. But the fact that the MEC is attempting to dodge this question, dit wil blyk asof die minister het 'n rede hoekom om nie eintlik die vraag te beantwoord. So kan ek vra, kan u 'n reëling maak, want ons doen moeite om vrae te vra hier, om antwoorde te kry, want die mense daar buite vra vir ons. Want op die een kant, Deputy Speaker, het ons 'n situasie waar Minister Windy se departement, en ek weet nie, hy is nou nie in die huis, het 'n dokument voorberei in terme van die beskerming van die PHA, wat nie eintlik die hele omvang, en hulle sê, dit is nou 'n dokument wat die hele kabinet, maar terselfdertyd het ons 'n situasie waar dit blyk asof die minister se departement is besig om die PHA se grond eintlik weg te gee in 'n sin na ontwikkelaars. So kan jy 'n reëling maak. Ek soek net, is hulle teen dit of nie? Surely that's not a breach of sub judice.
Ja, as ek mag reageer, die sub judice reël in die parlement is altyd in die diskresie van die stoel, is nie 'n afdwingbare eksakte verbod nie. Dis die een kant van die saak. Die tweede kant van die saak is die stoel kan nie 'n minister dwing om 'n bepaalde antwoord te antwoord nie. So wat die sub judice betref, is dit so soos jy reg gesê het. Ek het nie probleme dat die sub judice reël in die diskresie van die stoel is nie en dat 'n saak net nie na die meriete mag verwys nie. Dis waaroor dit gaan, soos jy reg gesê het. Maar aan die ander kant, die minister is vry om die vraag te beantwoord op die wyse wat hy of sy dit wil doen. So die stoel speel nie 'n rol om voor te skryf hoe 'n saak beantwoord moet word nie. Daarmee sal ek volstaan. Minister, jy kan voortgaan as jy wil.
Die regsadvies dat ek mag nie praat oor die saak tans nie. So dis nie van dak en dive nie. Dit is waaroor dit gaan. Die agbare Dakmoor hou ook in die middel van sy sin op. Daar was 'n verslag by die kabinet het nog nie 'n besluit geneem oor so 'n verslag nie. So hy het daar gestop. Hy het baie vir net sommer convenience sake. As my regsmening is dat ek nie oor 'n saak mag praat nie, kan ek nie oor praat nie. Dis ongelukkig so. Dit is 'n sensitiewe aangeleentheid. Dis 'n aangeleentheid van debat. En ek is baie gemaklik om vir die agbare Dakmoor te sê dat wanneer jy in 'n regering is, dat jy nie, wat jy baie versigtig moet wees. Ons is nie in 'n regering waar ons sê myn of ekonomie of dit is and. Ons moet almal akkommodeer. Daar's plek vir ekonomiese groei, daar's plek vir ontwikkeling, daar's plek vir mynbou. So in daardie raamwerk hanteer ons die wetgewing. Enige mens kan 'n aansoek indoen. Ons hanteer die wetgewing en die groep wat ons hof toe gevat het met hulle saak nou stel in die hof en ons sal dit daardeur neem en ons almal sal daaruit leer.
Agbare Dakmoor.
Thank you. From the MEC's answer, which clearly amounts to an unwillingness to answer a very simple question, I would like to ask, arising from his answer, so is it correct that the Provincial Cabinet have not officially endorsed the report commissioned by MEC Wendy?
Sover my kennis strek het ons dit nog nie endorse nie. Ons het wel 'n voorlegging gekry, maar ons moet verdere inligting kry oor die aangeleentheid.
Agbare Dakmoor.
Then I would like to ask, is the MEC aware of the view of both the chairperson of the relevant Standing Committee on Economic Opportunities, Member Schaefer, and the view of the committee itself in support of the preservation of the PHA?
Sowel as 'n klomp sowel as 'n klomp ander opinies, ja.
Can we move on? The last opportunity, Honourable Dakmoor.
Okay. Can the MEC give this House the assurance that none of the developers concerned here have met either with himself as the MEC or with representatives of the Democratic Alliance?
Agbare Speaker, ek het 'n baie eenvoudige lewe. Ek gaan huis toe en ek kom werk toe. Dankie.
We move on to the next question, which is question 6. Honourable Diana to Minister Bredell. Question number 6. Order. Minister, you may start with reply to number 6.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you to the member for the question. It's quite a lengthy answer, but it's an important answer.
Deputy Mayor.
The Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning has developed a Provincial Coastal Management Plan, approved March 2016, and also an implementation plan which put forward actions to address identified provincial priorities. The Provincial Coastal Management Plan and its identified priority areas are aligned to the national environmental sector of the provincial long and medium-term strategies, and enable a coordinated strategy to the operational response to the implementation of the legal mandate and roles and responsibilities of the province, estuary management as well as compliance have been identified as a priority areas within the coastal management program, and each have a number of associated strategies or actions that are being or will be implemented. A copy of the Western Cape Coastal Management Program is available on the departmental website, and I will give it to the member afterwards, a very long website address. The department, in collaboration with National Department of Environmental Affairs, their branch Ocean and Coast, initiated the Western Cape Estuary Management Framework and Implementation Strategy, EMFIS, project in 2016-17 financial year. The aim of this project was to bring 16 previously drafted estuary management plans, EMPs, in line with the minimum requirements as prescribed in the National Estuary Management Protocol, and also develop 17 new EMPs for estuaries which did not have EMPs in place. In addition, 10 estuary health management plans was to be developed for priority estuaries. In all, therefore, a total of 43 different locations and plans are currently being worked on in these sectors in the province. The judgment in the Supreme Court of Appeals in the case David Willingly and Abbott versus the Overstrand Municipality and others. It's a long case number, but this also in the answer, has resulted in uncertainty between the organs of state in understanding the roles and responsibilities between the spheres of government in terms of estuary management. This judgment reads with the definition for the municipalities in ICM Act, which states the following. Municipalities means the metropole, district and local municipalities, and is established according to the Local Government Municipal Structures Act 98 in relation with the implementation of the provisions of this act in an area which falls within both the local municipality and the district municipality, means a district and or a local municipality if the district municipality by agreement with the local municipality has assigned the implementation of that provision in that area to the local municipality. This has resulted in significant legal challenges emerging with the implementation of the National Estuary Management Plan. So between the Department of Environmental Affairs, the province, and DIA National, in terms of the intergovernmental cooperation and through various initiatives such as PAKISA, etc., are aiming to address this legislative gap that has recently emerged with the proposed provisions of the National Estuary Management Protocol and ICM Act under NEMA, as well as the employing the Intergovernmental Relationship Framework Act with local municipalities where required. The relevant departments are engaging in this initiative and concrete actions to address the constraints to delivery. Now it goes on and on, so we've got all the plans, and I can't stand and read everything for you, or I can hand it in later to the member, but we do have a gap within the legislation, basically. We're busy addressing it with our national colleagues, and we're also getting Cape Nature involved, Sun Parks is involved, and then obviously also Operation PAKISA, the members there is also involved to try and find a solution between all the parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Diana.
My follow-up question is, what interventions have the department put in place during the drought for the estuaries of the province, where no ecological water reserve established for the rivers and estuaries, no base flow reaches the estuary during droughts, which can permanently damage the ecosystem health and productivity during extreme.
First of all, Honourable Speaker, to answer that question, I think it's got a lot to do with planning. First of all, I think part of the drought, there's a realization the importance that our estuaries and our river systems play within the bigger biodiversity family. So we work very closely with Cape Nature, especially with the municipalities, on their planning and how they compile their spatial development frameworks. The estuaries, there's teams looking at that, but basically we can't do a lot currently because there's no water. Going forward, it's important to understand that the estuaries protects our underground water and that we need to protect the estuaries and how we're going to manage it, and with our EPWP programs, keep alien plants out of that. So it's a whole program, and also what we're busy negotiating with National, and they've gave us certain delegations to work with our team, not all the delegations because we've also got staff constraints, but going forward, working very closely with National. The problem that National got, they've also got staff constraints and they're far away, they're in Pretoria, but the whole team working into this, coming up with the 43 plans, I think will put our estuaries and our river systems in a much better place in the next 5 years.
Honourable Diana.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I like the fact that this department is working with the national department. Poor water quality poses a threat to environmental and human health in the Zandvlei estuary. Why was the sewage spill not guarded against, which led to Zandvlei being closed to the public?
Minister.
Well, colleague, Honourable Deputy Speaker, obviously as soon as there's a sewage spill, we will act as soon as possible and we're aware of it. Our whole water plan, we're busy re-looking at. I'm busy negotiating with National to ask them to be part of a task team. Remember, water is a national competency. In 2012, I made the mistake to come up with a water plan, and then we butt heads. So this time with Minister Quinte, I've asked him that, and we set up now a meeting, asked through the Premier's office, asked to meet him. We're willing to drive the process, but we want him to be part of the team to come up with a water plan for the Western Cape, and that will include everything. The quality of water, the quantity of water, how we're going to manage water, the sewage spills in the future, how we're going to deal with that. Also the sewage outlet into our rivers, is it still feasible, or must we bring all that water, grey water, back into the system? That I'm very much for it. Because if we're honest with one another, if there's a sewage outlet in the rivers and they're not up to standard, it takes us too long to find that out, and by that time the river is polluted and it takes years to fix that. So there's a whole system that we're busy rolling out, and I can promise the House that we've got a very open door now, and we work very closely with the national team.
Honourable Diana, your third opportunity.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. With the high E. coli levels in Zandvlei being a safety risk, is it true that the department is not testing for E. coli during the desalination plant purification process as alleged by the university professor?
I don't know which university professor. It's a new question. I can get. I will appreciate it if the member will give me the information. I've met with a couple of professors from the universities with statements. It's obviously important that we manage the quality of our water and measure the E. coli. We can't wait till there's 6 children and my colleague next to me jumped onto me. So obviously we need to get that information and act accordingly.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next question, which is question number 7. Honourable Kasela, again to Minister Bredell. Minister Bredell, question number 7. Order.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, to the Honourable colleague, thank you for the question. Since 2014, the Department assisted municipalities to improve communication between municipalities and communities with the following support programs: a communication strategy, a capacity building and training strategy, the development of a communication strategy policy and strategy guidance on how to better communicate to our municipalities, the development of communication plans, action plans, the rollout and implementation of that communication plans, the rollout of the traditional media training. This entailed radio interviews, writing skills and crisis management, conducting social media training, how to establish and run social media platforms, providing social media guidelines, covering protocols on the use of social media platforms, facilities, basic photographic training, empowering municipal communicators with skills to take better quality photos which they could use on their platforms and their print media, the establishment of social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and so forth. Then on brand development, cooperate and identify guide to the standardization of municipal brand identity, the municipal website development, the standardization of municipal brand identity was very important for us, the internal, external newsletters, including the printing thereof, and the print and production of campaign material. Then campaign development, the drought awareness was a program that we helped the municipalities with, their communication strategy around that, the local government election awareness and guidance, the smoke alarm awareness, the education and awareness around that, the standardized municipal services charter, to standardize service charters through 29 municipalities in the citizen-centric manner, and then Know Your Ward Committee campaign to create awareness around ward committees and the purpose thereof, and lastly to establish communication shared services to enable municipalities to better perform their communication function. I thank you.
Honourable Member Nkosela.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Honourable Minister. For any municipality to function, you've got to have the council, the administration, and of course, the communities as the third leg. I would like to check with the Minister whether these ward councillors and generally PR councillors alongside, when they meet with the ward committees, do they open the ward committees to the public, and how well are those meetings attended?
Minister.
It's a very important question. It's a very difficult one. We're coming on with the ward committees for a long time. First of all was to get all the municipalities to have ward committees, then the quality of the ward committees, the quality of the material within the ward committees. It's very important. The successful municipalities do invite the community. I think the one where you, the constituency head of, I think it's one of the successful models. I think they do invite the public, and obviously the public can comment and be part of the discussion, but the decision making must be within the committee. I think that's the difference. And also remember, we're also building on our app that we've developed, and that will also further enhance communication within the ward committees. From our side, it's very important that we do encourage public engagement and public communication to our public. It's crucial for democracy. Thank you.
Honourable Member Olivier, and then I'll come back to you. Honourable Olivier.
MEC, given particularly in Member Mngasela's constituency, given the current protest actions that is, seemingly is increasing regularly in that part of the municipality. Do you... No,
order. Allow the member to formalize his question.
Do you think that, with the ward committee system, we always had a problem that you have the 10 members on the committee, but from that 10 members, particularly those representing organizations, there seems to be a gap between the two. Does it, I'm not sure whether the department has looked into that so that it minimizes these protest actions, because it seems that there's a gap and some leaders are beginning to emerge and begin to represent communities on their own. So has the department looked into the issue of really those representing organization does really represent organization there? Because I think the gap is somewhere there.
Thank you, Member.
Whatever is discussed does not reach those communities.
Honourable Minister to respond.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The Honourable Member had the opportunity to comment on the Ward Committee Handbook. So we do have a Ward Committee Handbook, and maybe in the Standing Committee we must send it back to you guys again for looking at. But that's part of the answer. We've also translated the first province, the only province in the country, translated the ward committee hand.
Order.
We've also translated the ward committee handbook in Braille. That I think is a huge success. Even if the Honourable Yankee laughed at it, I really think it's a huge success, and I want to congratulate the department. Obviously, a ward committee is not perfect. It's work in progress. We try to better it every year. And within that, and I'm serious when I say let's look at the handbook. Let's discuss the handbook in the standing committee again, because the compilation of the ward committee will always be a challenge. Some municipalities allow 6 positions for organizations, other 4. Where's the right balance? We need to get gender in, so we also need to be very careful how the compilation of that. So it's work in progress, Honourable Speaker, and we open for any inputs. We've got a dedicated team working on that, working with all the municipalities to establish that and to let them understand the importance of taking the information through the ward committees to the standing committees of the councils, to the mayoral committee or the council, and then the feedback cycle back to the ward committee. It's not a perfect system currently, but that's the only way we're going to keep the residents informed. Thank you.
Honourable Nikasila.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I think I want to appreciate the responses given by the Minister, but the interest is in the handbook itself and whether councillors have been properly empowered to understand what is their responsibility in terms of that.
We've got workshops throughout the province. Every single councillor do have the handbook. They had training within it. And again, it's some councillors get it, they run with it. Others start to get afraid for the community. We will keep on training and keep on pronouncing on the importance of getting your community behind you. Thank you.
Honourable Janki, the last opportunity.
Can I put it to you? You had everything else you've told us.
Put it in the form of a question?
Yes, I'm going there. I'm going there. Can I put it to you that alles wat we hier nou vir ons gaan sê, is net speletjies for the following reasons, and this is the question. If this communication that you've told us was working, why would we continue, because from that year up to today, why would we continue having these increasing problems of distance between communities and municipalities? Honorable Madigizela has to go and explain that I have this project, these are the plans, and many of the protests are as a result of communities not knowing. So if you're saying this is working, why can't we see it in practice working?
Thank you, Member. Your question is clear, Minister.
Maybe because it's working that we don't have more marches and burning of tires. And it's a difficult year. It's an election year. We all know it. We all know there's electioneering. The system works, and we will keep on building. I stated that it's not a perfect system, and obviously there's people who want to make a grandstand who will never understand. But it's our responsibility as government to keep on communicating. That's why we try to better our systems every single year. Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to the next question, which is question 8. Again, Honourable Nikasela to Minister Bradell. Minister, question 8.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member, for the question. In collaboration with various stakeholders, such as the Provincial Treasury, the Department of the Premier, SALGA, and the Nelson Mandela University, the Department provides training to councillors. The following areas are covered during the training. Firstly, the constitutional mandate to introduction of local government law, the rules and procedures, conducting of meetings of municipal councils, the roles and responsibility of councillors, mayors, speakers, local government, including budgeting processes within municipalities, the law governing decisions in decision-making of local government, the oversight committees and the functioning of the municipal public accounts in local government, delegations of powers in local government, the code of conduct and procedures for discipline hearings and investigations, the role of councillors in the appointment of discipline in senior officials, section 62 appeals and duties of commissioners of oath, and then public participation and communication. To build on the above mentioned training programs, the department will roll out a summer school for councillors. The summer school will put special emphasis on the responsible citizenry and will be provided by the Stellenbosch University. This training will focus on the following themes: leadership concepts, leadership competencies, and leadership in action. Thank you.
Honourable Axilla.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for the response. In light of the fact that there is a responsibility, which is a very serious responsibility placed on councillors to appoint senior officials, as we saw that in KZN, for instance, 33 appointments had to be withdrawn because officials did not have the qualifications required. And with councillors who don't even have matric. In this province, Deputy Speaker, how is the situation when it comes to that?
From our side, Honourable Member, from the department side, we've put it in writing to all our municipalities to explain to them the procedures that they need to follow. And remember, there's different procedures for the appointment of a municipal manager and the appointment of directors and so forth, so that they can distinguish between that. And where they've decided to not follow the guidelines, we as a province, I refuse to sign off that, because remember, I must sign it off to the national department. It's one of the gaps within the legal framework that we're busy addressing now with the next round. Because by the time that I get the information from the municipalities, they've normally offered the contract already to the person, and most cases they've signed the contract, and then you're in trouble. But we've challenged those municipalities. We've won one of the cases within the court, and there's 3 or 4 that's still hanging, but we will not sign off if the legal process wasn't followed. Thank you.
I see the Honourable Davids first.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, my question to the Minister is, on your ward committees, you agreed on public participation, but on your education for your councillors, can you specifically tell us, are you aware that there's a lot of councillors that is not going for their training? Do you have a database on all those training that you've mentioned? How many councillors are attending that?
Agbare Minister.
The department do have the database. They sign in, they sign out, so we do have a database. And we encourage councillors to enter these training programs, because that's how you're going to build capacity. And it's not only with the department, there's a lot of training happened. Remember, after the election, national government has some training. We've got that records. Then Salga had some training. Then we had to give them some break, because we said they must also spend time in the municipalities. Then we started our training. In the midst, we've also offered what we called a circle of development with the University of Stellenbosch, realizing that there's different various levels of education within the councillors' domain, and also want to create the space for councillors to capacitate themselves. So that circle of training, you can enter at any space and you can exit at any space, because there's also people with doctorate degrees that need some training on specific items. And if you enter with a matric, you can after 4 years walk out with a degree. So, and there's 25 councillors participating within that program. I would like it to be more, but you can't force people to do that. Thank you.
Agbare Botha, wil jy volg? Nee. Dan afspraak Gillian.
Speaker, is net 'n follow-up question. Is daar enige wetgewing in local government wat 'n minimum kwalifikasies gee voor 'n raadslid ingesweer kan word? Is dit 'n follow-up question of question Makasela se vraag?
Nee, nie sover soos ek weet nie. Ek dink dit raak baie keer 'n politieke debat in partye. Ek sluit nie ten gunste daarvan nie. Dank u.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next question, which is question number 9? New questions. Honourable Makasela again to Minister Bradell. Question 2. It's question 2, not question 9. Question 2 of the new questions.
Okay, I will remain standing. Thank you to the Honourable Member again for the question, colleague. The Community Work Programme is a national programme which is implemented in all the local municipalities. The Community Works Programme is a national programme which is implemented in all the local municipalities and the metropolitan municipalities within the province, with a total of 17,000 work opportunities allocated. As of March 2018, the status of the CPW programme was as follows, and I've got the whole list of all 30 municipalities here, the targets, how many participants are there, and the reasons for deviation. I think what is of interest is maybe I must give you the total. Currently, the target for all the municipalities is 17,500, and we've currently got 12,377 participants within that. If the member will allow me, I will hand this in. Otherwise, I can stand and read all 30 municipalities.
Honourable Makasela.
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Minister, the problem that I want to state right from the outset, and I would like you to help me here. We see how this program is failing. A program that should be supporting people who are desperately looking for bread and butter. How will you ensure that this department is ensuring that the national government, which is the agent responsible for this, is able to spend this money allocated for the job opportunities like this one? That is much needed in opportunities. It's much needed.
Honourable Deputy...
Order, please.
Honourable Speaker. Sorry. Honourable Speaker. Yeah.
Order.
Honourable Speaker, it's a national programme. It's a national programme, as I stated. The programme do have many challenges, and and a lot of other issues within. And I think we need to be honest that money is not the problem, because we put a lot of money in, but at the bottom there's only a little coming out, and it's because of making use of all sorts of agencies and so forth to get people into jobs. So, and the problem that we sit with, to be honest, if there's a payment failure or something, then people phone me. And we're not in charge of this program. It's a national program, or when there's a march, then they want to see the MEC. This program is a national program. We're busy negotiating. Remember, we've also got a new MEC. So nationally, we will look into this kind of programs and also the salaries that we offer. National minister. And so we will negotiate, and also looking at the compensation, because I think currently the only people or institution that's allowed to pay less than minimum wage is national government. Thank you.
I see, first Honourable Gillian and then Honourable Makasela. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. So, very MEC vir ons sê is dat as hierdie program nie werk in die Weskaap nie, en dit is 'n nasionale program deur die Nasionale Departement van Kokte, is u dan bereid om die program vir Kokte terug te gee om te administreer?
Agbare Speaker, ons is besig met die program, en ek het nie gesê hy werk nie soos wat hy moet werk nie. Hy kan baie beter werk.
Order, please.
As ons al die geld wat na die agencies toe gaan, deur die trek te kry op grondvlak, ons baie meer mense werk gee. En ek dink dis wat ons almal wil doen aan die einde van die dag. So die program het groot uitdagings. Daar is uitbetalings wat faal. Daar is want die agentskap faal. Daar is probleme met die program. Ons werk saam met ons nasionale departement om hierdie probleme te probeer uitsorteer. Ek dink dit is almal se belang om mense aan die werk te kry.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Makasela.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, only 1.8% has been spent in this in this project, only 1% of the budget. Now, the question here that I want to request from the minister, what measures does he think are best in order to ensure this project succeeds in the province? The fact that it is run nationally, it does not mean it must fail. And what are the measures that he thinks that should be placed in order to make sure that people get opportunities to jobs?
I see the minister.
Dis moeilik om jou persoonlike opinie te gee, maar ek dink regtig ons kan baie meer doen as ons om 'n tafel sit en ons and we debate all this job creating programs. I really think that it's not helpful if people enter a program and they stay in the program, like the EPWP or CWP program. It must be a training program. They must go out with a skill and they must provide for themselves so that we can get a new people in this program. So I think that will be the ideal. Obviously, I would like to be more in control of the program so we can push it through our municipalities, keep them to account, and create more opportunities, especially for the youth and especially for new matriculants after matric, get them through the program, give them a specific skill for the market and get them into jobs. I also think that we can combine these programs much more with the private sector, so that if we provide the training, the private sector will take that up if we can join forces, but we can only do it if we get more control. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Yankee. This is the fourth follow-up, members.
Yeah. Honourable MEC, do you agree with me? You don't even know what I'm going to say. You have to listen first
Honourable
before
Yankee,
you
please
decide.
direct your question to the chair. Thank you.
Through you, Speaker,
I'm here.
I want to ask the Honourable MEC if he agrees with me that both in the annual report of this department, but also in your speech, which is very recent, there was no concern that you've raised about the CWP. In fact, in your speech, it becomes part of the numbers. Your budget speech? You forgot that? Okay.
Members, please direct your inquiries through the chair. Thank you.
So I'm asking the question. So he agrees with me that up until this point, unless what we got in the annual report, but also what he presented in the budget vote, he forgot certain facts that he now, all of a sudden, has remembered.
Thank you, Honourable Yankee. I see the minister.
There were so many bad results from national government that I was ashamed to name and shame all of them.
That concludes question number 2. We now move to question number 3. Honourable Ace to Minister Schaefer. I see the Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Answer to part A. Unfortunately, the grade 5 learner, Mivuyo Homane, 11 years old, tragically passed away after being run over by a truck on the school premises. The incident occurred during interval around 10:30. The municipality is currently landfilling a piece of land at the back of the school premises. Learners were prohibited from being on the site. It is reported that the learner chased the truck and then was run over. B. Safe Schools officials visited the school and addressed the principal on the safety precautions that need to be adhered to ensure learner safety around the site at the school. It is required that increased supervision is maintained when learners are on interval. C. On the morning of the accident, immediate arrangements were made by the WCED to support the school. This included a psychologist, social worker, and learning support advisor to assist learners and educators with the trauma. The Department of Social Development and other community organizations have also assisted. All learners were debriefed by either a psychologist, social worker, or a trained counsellor. Counselling and support was also given to the family of the learner, as well as educators and other staff members. In addition, further counselling and support was provided the following day by the school psychologists and social workers of the WCED. Parents were asked to report if the children displayed symptoms of emotional distress during the evening at home, such as insomnia, nightmares, etc. All learners and staff were alerted to post-traumatic stress symptoms. The Employee Wellness Program for government officials were also made available to staff members who requested it. Continuous support is being provided to the school. I personally phoned the principal to express my condolences and offer whatever assistance they needed. I also arranged for a contribution towards funeral costs for the family.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Ace.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, MEC. You didn't really respond to how you will prevent this happening in future, because this is something happening. You say it's tragic. Yes, we all agree with that. But how would you prevent this happening in the future?
Yes, I did. I answered part B by telling you that Safe Schools officials visited the school and addressed the school as to safety precautions that need to be taken, which is how we're planning to prevent it from happening. It is unfortunately one of those tragic incidences where you cannot keep an eye on every child, at every minute of the day.
Thank you. Honourable Ace, the second
Thank you, Speaker.
follow-up.
MEC, do you have specific guidelines or your department when there's construction happening
Order.
At the school or any school to really protect the learners? Because, I mean, this was not after hours or anything. This was in school time, and parents entrust their children to the school, and then that happened.
I think I've already answered that, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Olivier.
Through you, Speaker.
Order.
Through you, Speaker. Given the fact that this incident happened during school hours while learners are there, and we all understand the energies with learners on school premises, was this work environment managed, or was there anyone that was on site making sure that the place where the learners are was safe?
My information is that there was a teacher on duty during interval as required in that particular area at the time, yes.
The last one, Honourable Olivier.
MEC, is there any investigation, and whether that how soon can we expect a outcome of that? Because this is quite serious, and I'm afraid that it might happen because you don't have an answer for whether there's any measures that this might not happen. And is it possible that your department or whoever works on school ground refrain from working during school hours, maybe on school holidays, after hours, to ensure that this incident does not take place?
I have answered the question, Honourable Olivier, about that we have safety precautions that are supposed to be required during these building operations. I don't think it's reasonable to expect no work ever to be done at schools, because, I mean, people have to do work during working hours also. But the fact of the matter is... Sorry? The fact of the matter is that this was actually a volunteer project. It was being done voluntarily by people to assist the school, and they've now withdrawn from the school because of the trauma that's been caused by this incident.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes question number 3. And I go to question number 4. It's by the Honourable Ace to Minister Bradal. I see the Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you
Order,
to the Honourable
please.
Ace. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Sorry, Minister Bradal, there's just too much noise. Members, can you compose yourselves, please? Minister Schaefer. Thank you. You may proceed, Minister
Thank you, Honourable
Bradal.
Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Ace for the question. It's a long answer. We've put a lot of work in because it's also a learning curve, I think, for all of us. To what degree an elected municipal councillor has freedom of speech in formal meetings of a council and outside of such a meeting? So let me start. Honourable Speaker, Section 168 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa 1996 provides that members of a municipal council are entitled to participate in its proceedings and those of its committees in a manner that allows parties and interests reflected within the council to be fairly represented. Secondly, is consistent with democracy. Thirdly, may be regulated by national legislation. Section 28 of the Local Government Municipal Structures Act 98, Act 117 of 98 Structures Act gave effect to Section 168 of the Constitution and requires that provincial legislation be developed in terms of Section 161 of the Constitution and further provides for a framework within which the provincial legislation must comply. Section 161 of the Constitution provides that provincial legislation within the framework on national legislation may provide for privileges and immunities of municipal councillors and their members. Given effect to Section 161 of the Constitution and Section 28 of the Structures Act, in 2011, the Western Cape Privileges and Immunities of Councillors Act 2011, Act 7 of 2011, Privileges and Immunity Act was developed by the Department of Local Government and passed by the Provincial Department. Section 2.1 of the Privileges and Immunities Act provides that a councillor has freedom of speech in any meeting of the council of which he or she is a member, and in any committee or sub-council or mayoral committee of that council. Section 2.2 of the Privileges and Immunities Act provide that councillors, the right of speech firstly includes participation in the deliberations or voting on any resolution, decision, report, paper, or minutes adopted or approved by the council or any of its committees or sub-councils or its mayoral committee, and secondly, is subject to the council's rules of order and the code of conduct. As mentioned above, the Section 2.2b says freedom of speech is subject to council's rules of order and the code of conduct. The code of conduct referred to is the code of conduct for councillors, Schedule 1 of the Local Government Systems Act 2000, Act 32 of 2000. Councillors therefore have freedom of speech in council meetings and its committees, as is provided for in the municipal rules of order. Bylaws or policies of such freedom of speech may be limited. Municipal rules of order must provide for what constitutes permissible means of limiting free speech or breaches of the rules. In answering the question with respect to the degree of freedom of speech, an elected municipal councillor has outside formal meetings of council, reference must be made to the interpretation of Section 28 of the Structures Act by the courts. In the case between Dikoko and Moklatla, City of Cape Town, it was first decided by the North West High Court that when councillors attend standing committee meetings, Section 28 of the Structures Act, which provides for freedom of speech of councillors, is not applicable, as such meetings are not council meetings. However, the Constitutional Court in the same case considered the purpose of privileges in a constitutional democracy which promotes freedom of speech and expression and full and effective deliberation and removes the fear of repercussion for what is said, which in turn advance effective democratic government. The court therefore concludes that if a councillor participates in a genuine and legitimate function of business of council, whether inside or outside the council, the privilege afforded under the Section 28 ought to be extended to him or her. Therefore, as per the Constitutional Court judgment and according to the purpose of privileges in the constitutional democracy, which is privilege of freedom of speech, when a councillor participates in a genuine and legitimate function of business of council, whether inside or outside the council, Section 28 must be extended to that councillor. Then the B section of the question, what limitations they may be and are subject to as regards freedom of speech. Limitations on the freedoms of speech may be permissible when one or more of the following disturbance occur: improper interference with or impedance of a council or committee when such a council or committee is exercising its authority or performing its function, or the performance by a councillor of his or her functions as a councillor. Second, threaten or obstruct a council proceedings to or going from a meeting or of council or committee. Thirdly, assault or threaten a councillor or deprive a councillor of any benefit on account of the conduct of councillors in the council committee while a council or committee is meeting, create or take part in any disturbance within the precinct. 5, fail to refuse to comply with the instructions by the person presiding at the meeting of the council or committee regarding the presence of any person at that meeting. 6, fail or refuse to comply with the instruction by the duly authorised official of the council regarding, firstly, the presence of persons at a particular meeting of the council or committee, and secondly, the possession of any article including a firearm in the precinct or any part thereof. Permissible limitations of freedom of speech was confirmed by the Constitutional Court in the Democratic Alliance versus the Speaker of the National Assembly and other judgments 86 of 15. The court stated in paragraph 38 that the privileges contained in section 58 1A and 71A can never go so far as to give members a license to disrupt the proceedings of Parliament, that it may be hamstrung and incapacitated from conducting its business. Section 58(1) and Section 71(1)A are similar to Section 161 of the Constitution, which applies to municipal councillors, and Section 28 of the Structures Act, which provides that councillors have freedom of speech in municipal councils and in its committees, subject to the rules of order of that municipality. So that's more or less it. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Honourable
Thank you,
Ace.
Speaker, and thank you, MEC. I think you covered the constitutional part very well, and I think it's useful information or very important information. I want to get to the outside part of council then, seeing that you covered the other part extensively, and ask to what extent would you allow or support or guide a councillor when they speak outside of the meetings, meaning a quarterly report back meeting? Are they allowed to freely speak what happened in council, or are they prohibited in terms of the guidelines you gave now?
Well, first of all, I think council meetings should be open to the public, so it's within the public domain. I don't think we need to hide. Obviously, the sensitive parts when there's personalities involved, so disciplinary hearings, and we all know the green part of colour parts of the agenda, that things need to stay confidential. The rest we need to talk to, and we need to be able to discuss it. Ward councillors, doesn't matter which political party, must be able to discuss these things within ward committees. So first of all, I think we need to promote open meetings so that people get the information.
Honourable Ace.
Thank you, Speaker. So, MEC, when a councillor speaks out of council, would the councillor also be allowed to speak against the council where there's something wrong going in the council? Council may be not being administered correctly, or would you say that that must be kept under covers and not be in the open?
When council is doing something wrong, we can. There's a couple of routes we can take. First of all, you can make a case and take the speaker on, take the decision on review. It's not what we in person want. It's we public representatives. I don't know if there's a specific case you refer to. Then we must look into that case. But obviously, there's different views within a council, and we cannot choose which ones we like or don't like. We need to be able to debate it. We need to be able to discuss it.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, then, how would you support councillors when they get threatened to say anything they say directly or indirectly, they communicate must be with the necessary authority? And this is what the leader of the DA said, Mr. Maimani, that they're not allowed to communicate anything to anybody. And I'm quoting, if any person directly or indirectly communicates anything without the authority of Thomas Walters, they in trouble. How would you support a councillor like this to support?
Thank you, Chief Whip. Honourable Ace.
Speaker, MEC, how would you support the councillor in this regard, specifically protecting the councillor where the code of conduct is very clear? They must communicate in an honest and integrity way. How would you protect that councillor?
Thank you. Order, please.
Well, obviously, this is also a new question, but it's a new question. It's a new question, and there's context to these things. Obviously, when you communicate, I will always promote honest communication to protect the integrity of this house or any council. So open and honest conversations is good, and open and honest communication I will always promote.
Thank you. So is this the final follow-up?
Yep.
Ja, dan maar nou so
Ons is nog nie klaar nie.
nou.
Ja, no, dis nie klaar.
You may proceed, Honourable Dankie.
Through you, Speaker.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Honourable MEC, this is the last question. In the interest of the freedom of speech, you have highlighted with us that, and one of the things you spoke about was the impediments to that. And here is a very classical example where that happened. Have you taken any action as an MEC for local government in this province on the specific case that has just been shared here now?
Thank you, Honourable Dankie. I see the Minister.
I don't know the case because the Honourable, he hides the case. Give me the information.
Thank you. That concludes question 4. We now move to question 5. It's by Asseblief Agbare Dankie. We are now getting to question number 5. It's the Honourable Gillian to the Minister of Health. I see the Honourable Minister, Minister Mbombo.
Okay. In terms of the expansion of the posts, we have 2 registrars and 8 forensic pathology officers.
Asseblief, Honourable Dankie, bedaar. Sorry.
If you recall, in November 17, I think there was a question that was
Minister,
asked.
just tilt your mic a little bit. There you go.
In November 2017, similar question was asked by the Honourable Member Ace, where we indicated that we have made these posts available. So now we do have those posts. People are appointed, 2 registrars and 8 forensic pathology officers.
Thank you. Honourable Gillian.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to highlight to the MEC that the cases load in this province went from 3,548 in 2014-2015. It rises to 3,923 cases. Now, MEC, do you think the appointments that you just highlighted now is enough to assist in this?
From the previous post to adding 10 people, 8 forensic pathology officers, 2 registrars, and 1 medical officer. It's part of the beginning. We won't know whether it's enough until we have already, but so far, as I indicated, that we haven't received, in terms of the complaints related to the shortage. So we have managed to reduce the backlog. As also, for example, the MJC will also written us a letter and thanking us that there is no more delays. So we won't know because we have to do a case by case. So 6 forensic, as I indicated, 2 registrars, 1 MO, and 8 forensic pathology officers this year. I won't know.
Okay, I see the Honourable Gillian.
Yes, Speaker. There was a oversight visit where I was not part of, but I got my report from the members who were there. Now, part of the current challenges faced in this department, still after you appointed new staff, on page 23 out of this report, it stated, and I quote, all of this is dependent on the availability of staff, and it is challenges that this department is still facing. Now, my question to the MEC is, and I am very, very serious on this, whatever other honorable members wants to make comments, I don't care. Do you really think, MEC, getting a report from an oversight visit, dated last week, MEC, I gave my excuses if I'm not part, but we've got 4 members on this committee, and the MEC must do his own oversight. He must stop looking at me.
Honourable Gillian, thank you. Is that your question?
No, that's not my question.
Okay, so
but
what
that
was
is
your
for
question
Fritz.
to the Minister, please?
The question to the Minister is, do you really think, after an oversight report stating very clearly that most of the challenges in this department is because of staff shortages, do you think you have solved the problem?
Indicated that so far we have added more posts. Of course, there will never be enough in any kind of, so whether it's FPS, whether it's a EC, whether it's whatever, we'll never have enough. But in terms of what we have to do more. So the mere fact that we have appointed people, it's part of the things that are going on. So in terms of that, the question about, do I think that is it enough? No, it won't be enough. It will never be enough because I don't know how many people will die tomorrow or the other, because all these forensic pathology officers, they have to respond to our national deaths. So if we will have money, we could have more people to appoint in any way, in any department.
Honourable Gillian.
Yes, thank you. Also out of the oversight report, it is still reported that this personnel is working from 6 to 6. Do you have anything in place to alleviate that? Because it's a pressure on the staff members.
Which personnel? Because we have got forensic pathologists, we have forensic pathology officers, forensic pathology assistants, we have got the administrators, so which ones?
Sorry, Chief.
Can I ask the Minister a question?
Yes, you may.
Minister, have you received this report that the member talks about?
Okay, the reason I'm reflecting, for example, a pathologist works 24 hours, for example. An FPA might work lesser, an FPO might make less. That's why I'm saying that I don't know exactly which ones that you are talking about, so that I can have a context.
Thank you. That concludes question number 5. We are now on question number 6 from the Honourable Mackenzie to the Honourable the Minister of Social Development. I see Minister Fritz.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie, for the question. The Mitchell's Plain Youth Cafe was relocated from Rocklands, just at the back, in June 2017, and is progressing very well at its current location in the Mitchell's Plain Town Centre. Now, those people who go on site visits will know the town centre is where everything happens. Those ones who go on site visits, they will know. The decision to relocate the youth cafe was largely motivated by the need to increase the accessibility, Honourable Mackenzie. In this regard, it's been a major success as it is located next to the Mitchell's Plain Transport Hub. I was there last week. I'm still fighting with the service provider because our sign was still not up, and I want to take Mr. Buta Ali and another Buta Hamad to go put up it ourselves, because sometimes I think the service providers think they're the owners of everything.
Thank you. I see the Honourable Mackenzie
Thank you.
first,
Can the
and then
Minister
Honourable-
share with us what services are provided at the Youth Cafe in Mitchell's Plain?
I want to say that, firstly, also that the Youth Cafe
Order,
also
please.
represents a major part.
Minister Fritz, kindly address the chair, please. Thank you.
The Youth Cafe also represents a major partnership with the City of Cape Town, who provides the facility for free of charge to us. And the services provided at that specific one, because remember, it differs from Youth Cafe to the Youth Cafe. They range from including IT services, entrepreneurial development, psychosocial support, and other skills development programs. And I know one of the programs that was quite interesting is the trauma release exercise. One of those programs is a very, very specific, dealing with trauma of our young people. A lot of our young people have a lot of trauma. I also want to report that for the last year, the Youth Cafe has reached 1,304 young people through a range of programs. Now, I am not, as Honorable Maleka Makaleni will know, I'm not the person who chase numbers. But this, yes, is Maleka. But as she knows, because she's a very active member of our committee, this seems to be a kind of program that works, that gets young people to in. And it also reminds me, and I think some of the older persons, like the Honorable Premier, will remember the Christian Institute in the 70s. And they used to have very similar programs where young people and people can come and get skills in Mowbray until it was banned by their apartheid government.
Honourable Makaleni. Sorry, Honourable Mackenzie, Honourable Makaleni, and then I see you.
And I'm coming next. Thank you, Speaker. My question then will be, seeing that we have relocated from the Rocklands Youth Cafe to Mitchell's Plain, where the space is now smaller and there is not all the programs that we were doing in the Rockland Cafe currently, what does it cost you, or what did it cost you to run the Rocklands Youth Cafe, and what does it cost you now running the Mitchell's Plain Youth Cafe? You know I will ask that question.
You're very predictable, Honourable Makaleni, but that's a very good question. Because what Honourable Makaleni is saying, the one in Rocklands was a very expensive, because we had a private owner and he charged, and every time they see government, they see money. They see dollars floating, and they just want to really charge us. And we were very lucky to get this facility from the city for free. You know, basically for free. And I'm looking at the Honourable Donald just to remind him that it was for free. And that we saved quite a lot of money on renting. But also, Honourable Makaleni, the notion of the Youth Cafe is a smaller space, but it affords us the opportunity to move in and to get a footprint in our communities, like Tafelsig, like Beacon Valley, and to get programs into those communities. And I think that's the exciting, it's smaller, but that's the exciting point, to get into those communities and actually go to where the young people are. In fact, I went the other day and there was a very, very active, packed place, but smaller, but packed. And I think that footprint we're talking about at different spaces in our community, that these are not little static places, that they are dynamic, interactive, working spaces. And I think that's the point.
Thank you, Minister. I see Honourable Mackenzie, after which I see the Honourable Cavido.
Minister, given that they're now at a smaller space when they were in Rocklands, how many youth leaders or youth facilitators is employed at the Youth Cafe at the towns or in Mitchell's Plain, and are they able to meet the demands?
Mackenzie, what we built in the budget is to have 10 of our internships allocated to each youth cafe. And so we have 10 at Rocklands, and then we pay for a full-time administrator who's normally the youth cafe manager. And it's interesting, Madam Speaker, to see the development of people who used to just come in, who were unemployed, who were just laying at home, and how they get developed. Because the whole principle of the Youth Cafe, as Honourable Makaleni will remember, is around earning your place, earning. We don't give out handouts anymore, it's earning your position and earning everything. And I think that's the point, I think, that you asking me.
Thank you, Minister. I see Honourable Cavido.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Honourable Fritz. Really positive stuff. I just wanted to know, given the high incidence of youth delinquency in Mitchell's Plain, whether any provision has been made for specific and dedicated youth diversion programs, a la Chrysalis type of, except the conventional training and recreational aspects. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Kivita. That's again a very important question because it speaks to the different programs that we have. Now, diversion in law means a very specific thing. Remember, diversion in law means that diverting people out of the criminal justice system, specifically young people, so that they don't become criminals and that we don't have criminal records so they can get jobs afterwards. So we run a very specific program around diversions at the Mitchells Plain Court. So that's a separate one. The Youth Cafe, we've also come to believe that all our young people are not all, have all substance problems. I remember, it sounds very familiar.
Water.
That they are great young people. Why are we not starting to celebrate them? The guys who are doing well, who's laying at home with a university degree. We give that guy hope. And if the youth cafes can only be factories of hope, that's exactly what it is. So thanks for that, sir. But there are all those different levels of interventions within our communities.
Thank you, Minister Fritz. That was the final follow-up, and it also concludes the question session. We now move to questions to the Premier without notice. Just a reminder, there are 2 follow-ups which must be relevant to the original question. And the first person on my order paper is the Honourable Chacham. Chacham.
Speaker, Premier, in 2016, you visited NetFem.
Sorry, could you speak up a little bit, please, Honourable Chacham?
No, it's in 2016, you visited NetFem with the ambassador of Israel. Yes. 2017, it was Musi Maimane, through the office of the ambassador, visiting the deadly Netanyahu. Later that year, 2017, the mayor, Dilin, complained that she was forced to sign contracts with the Israeli-based companies. So what I would want to know, Premier, is my first question. How many companies or contracts that the province is having with Israel-originated companies? How many of those companies? Companies that are having head offices in Israel, how many of them that we are interacting with them here, and how many of them have contracts, maybe with the government of the province?
Thank you. I see the Honourable the Premier.
Madam Speaker, I have absolutely nothing to do with procurement, so I wouldn't know.
Thank you. There's an answer.
She must say that.
No, Honourable Chacham, it's Honourable, everyone in the House. There is no he or she. We are all honourable members.
No, ndiyatsho kaloku. Ndiyatsho wena speaker. Ndiyatsho uba yena xa engayiqondi into makahambe atsho ndiseza yoyiphanda angatsho ngejiki ezinoshori uba lo mba uthwane. Question yami yesibini, my second question.
Sorry, no, what I was asking you, what I was addressing you on was the fact that every member in this House is referred to as an honourable member.
No, I agree with that.
Thank you.
It can't be disputed, you are right.
Thank you.
That's why you are there, just to make that correction. The second question, Speaker. I just want to know, the USA have now an embassy in Jerusalem. I just want to know from the Premier, in terms of the international relations of our provincial government, why have we kept quiet when people of Palestine are being murdered in Jerusalem?
Yeah. Order, please. Order, please, Honourable Makaka.
Madam
Minister
Speaker,
Schaefer, please.
we don't have a mandate on international affairs. It was one of the few mandates that is solely confined to the national government. Our interaction with other countries is related purely to what we can learn from them to establish best practice in governance in the areas that are our constitutional mandate in the Western Cape, and the location of embassies and the protracted wars and conflicts between groups or nations is not one of them.
Thank you. This is your last question, Honourable Chacha.
Yes, for now. Speaker, I would want to know. I
will pretend I never heard.
In the previously, we have seen how the Premier have actually commented on issues of colonialism. And she seems to be favor certain aspects of colonialism. I just want to understand from the Premier what aspects of colonialism and apartheid regime that he supports in Palestine or Israel that is happening there.
That's a disconnected question, but Premier, you're welcome to respond.
I've never said that any aspect of apartheid had any benefits whatsoever. So I don't know how apartheid comes into this question. But I can only comment about South Africa. And the very fact that we have a multi-party system and a parliament like this one that works according to the rules that it does, and that demands that I come here to answer questions without notice, and that the opposition can cross-examine me, is one such consequence. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the first question. The second question is by the Honourable Member Gopi to the Premier. Honourable Gopi.
Thank you.
Order, please, Honourable Chacham. Chief Whip, I'm ordering you to, please. Manage yourself. You may proceed, Honourable Gopi.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, on the 12th of May, a story made headlines, #the getting advice and support from Zille as she fights to keep her party membership and mayoral chain, where Mayor de Lille revealed that she was speaking to the Premier and that she was been getting advice and support from the Premier. She also said that the Premier was upheld and how she was treated by the party. Now my first question is, can the Premier tell us what exact does the Premier support, what exact support does the Premier give to the Mayor of Cape Town, Patricia de Lille, and what advice did the Premier give to her?
See the Premier.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I can answer
Order,
that.
please.
I can answer that question from the perspective of my role as the Premier of the Western Cape, which I happily will do. Ever since we were in an initial coalition with the Independent Democrats, I have met Mayor de Lille on a regular basis. It's usually every 2 weeks, sometimes every 3 weeks, and sometimes once a month. And we meet for a meal and we discuss issues relating to our respective roles in province and in city as it happens at the moment. So we continue those meetings because we separate party and state, and we continue having professional conversations in which we discuss with each other the respective spheres of government for which we carry part responsibility.
Thank you. You may proceed, Honourable
Speaker, the Premier earlier in the month said that she support the rule of law. Now, I would like to ask if the Premier, she support the Mayor of Cape Town when she claims the party did not allow proper procedures when it removes her from a mayoral seat.
Oh, Honourable Magaka, it would be so nice if you would.
Madam Speaker, that is an issue that is currently before the courts, and directly and imminently before the courts, and it goes right to the heart of the merits of a case, and I certainly cannot express an opinion, and it's actually irrelevant what my opinion is.
Thank you. The last follow-up, Honourable Gopi.
Does the Premier agree with the manner in which the axing of the Mayor, Patricia de Lille, was handled, which the court said the DA did not allow proper procedures when it fired de Lille?
The court,
Order, please. The Premier is on the floor.
the court has not said that, Madam Speaker. That is precisely the question before the court that will happen in about 2 weeks' time.
Thank you. That concludes question 2. The third question, I see the Honourable Schaefer.
Thank you, Speaker. To Honourable Premier, let me ask her a question that actually pertains to the Premier's work. So, Premier, I know that you've just recently returned from an international trip. I'd like to know what key themes were discussed at the Regional Leaders Summit on your road.
Thank you.
Yes, that is extremely relevant.
Order, please, members. Everyone needs to be afforded. Premier, kindly take your seat. Members, the first 2 questioners were afforded time and silence when they posed their question. Can I please ask that you respect the other speakers on the floor as well? You may proceed, Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, the issues were very relevant at the Regional Leaders Summit, and we had a key role to play because we've been recognized by Moody's as one of the fastest growing green economies in the world. And the question that was before all of us regional leaders was the issue of climate change, the impact on our various governments, how we are dealing with it, and what the prospects are for the future. Now, that is obviously very relevant to us, not only because we've successfully established a very vibrant and growing green economy, but also because the climate change is responsible for this very protracted drought.
Honourable Magaka, you are out of order. Thank you.
Can't take facts, Madam Speaker, because because climate change has also been identified as one of the causes of this protracted drought that we are facing. And so I have been very interested in hearing what the situation is with other economies and what they're doing. And of course, they are profoundly different. For example, one of our partner regions is Bavaria in Germany. And you will remember that after Fukushima, there was an immediate decision to undertake what is known as the Energiewende, which was to stop all nuclear and go green. And so there was an enormous amount that we in the Western Cape, with such a fast-growing sun and solar energy and small-scale embedded generation program across the province, could learn from how they managed it. And so we went through all of the provinces and learned a lot from them. But perhaps the most enlightening was Quebec, actually, where the conference was held, because their CEO of what is their equivalent of Eskom, which is called Quebec Hydro, spoke about what they are doing to harness green energy and what they've been doing for years and years and years to harness green energy, to bring down the cost of electricity and to make it very attractive to invest especially for producers who need a lot of energy and electricity. And it was tragic for me to think about the comparisons between what I heard the Chief Executive Officer of Hydro-Quebec say when I compared it with what Eskom is doing. Here in South Africa, where we have such wonderful sun and such wonderful wind and waves, in Quebec they have great resources of water, which we don't have, fresh water. But we have waves and very many other sources of potential energy. They have picked this up long ago and started harnessing it to the point that they have really been on the forefront of the switch to green energy and are bringing their costs of electricity lower and lower, and therefore driving economic growth, which creates jobs. And that is one of the reasons why they are bringing down their unemployment. And the same is happening in many other places. Now, instead of doing that, years too late, Eskom woke up and decided to build 2 new coal-fired power plants in Kusile and Medupi, costing billions and billions of rands. At a time when our energy was going through blackouts, as we all remember, and in a disruptive period that gave us the incentive to go into green energy. And it was the private sector, not the public sector in South Africa, that recognized the need to go into green energy. And in contrast to a place like Quebec, the government takes the lead. It's a capable state. The electricity utility, which is also a monopoly, drives the issues. But in South Africa, we have to wait for the private sector to do it. And then the consequence, Madam Speaker, is that because Eskom has a monopoly on reticulation of electricity or of transporting electricity and allowing people to use it, they are desperately keen to prevent people from moving into green energies because they have to sell a lot of coal-fired energy, which is getting more and more expensive, so that they can pay back the massive loans that they took out on these escalating, obsolete projects. And the tragedy with our country is that any person who can afford to buy into small-scale embedded generation is doing so, which means that the poorest of the poor will be left buying energy, more and more expensive energy, from Eskom. And this is the dilemma that we face. And looking at the comparison between a capable, proactive state like you have in Quebec with their electricity generation utility and ours, and there were several comments there that Eskom was once the leading electricity utility in the world, and how we have completely failed to keep on the cutting edge of the new trends of cheap electricity generation, and how that will precisely start exacerbating the divisions between the wealthy and the middle class on the one side and poor people on the other side. Because the middle class can buy out of the state's failure. The middle class can buy out of the state's failure in education, in healthcare, in policing, and now in electricity generation, and water consumption now. And the tragedy of an incapable state in our context is that the poorest of the poor, who only have the state system to rely on, suffer most from this failure. So there was a lot of stuff to learn, but perhaps the most important thing that I learned was unless you have a capable state as the #1 priority, things get worse and worse for the poor. And unless we learn that lesson and get away from these other obsessions that dominate our time, life is going to get worse and worse for the poor in South Africa. Thank you, Speaker.
Honourable Schaefer.
Thanks, Speaker. Premier, that sounds very frustrating in a way, and I think because I believe that all the premiers were with you, as far as I can understand, but how can we as a province then take some of this insight forward into the next 5 to 10 years to ensure that the Western Cape benefits from those kinds of things that you've witnessed there. I mean, it would really be a waste to think that we're at a complete loss because we can't move forward because we're stuck at a national level and a policy uncertainty level.
Thank you. Order.
The bottom line is this, that voters get the government they vote for, I'm afraid. And in South Africa, people still think that it's a choice between races. It's actually a choice between a capable, competent, and committed government and one that only sees the state as a front for looting. That's the choice. And the sooner we get to make those choices, the better for the poor in South Africa, actually, Madam Speaker. Now, we have heard a lot about the oceans economy. And I had the privilege of being asked to be the guest speaker at the opening of the Hamburg Port Festival. And it is a huge event, and there were ocean economy specialists from all over the world there. And I gave a seminar to a large number of the leading CEOs and others there. And I spoke about the prospects for South Africa, our oceans economy drive. I spoke about our special economic zone coming together in Saldanha, our deep water port, the range of other things that we're trying to do with the small harbours, etc., etc. And afterwards, several of the people came to me and said, look, South Africa talks a good game, but you never follow up. You never deliver. They said South African ports are amongst the most inefficient and expensive in the world. And so you can forget about this dream of, for example, getting an oil and gas hub for rig repair and other things until you have sorted out the inefficiency of your ports. They said to me that if there is a slight wind, which we easily cope with in the ports that we do business with all over the world, the dock workers say they can't operate in the wind and they go off for the day. And it costs ships millions to wait in the harbour to be offloaded. They say that if they're coming in and they need a tug to pull one of the ships in, and it's going to take 2.5 hours, but there's only 2 hours left on the shift, they have to wait till the next day. Now, if you go to a port such as Hamburg, and I was taken on a very, very interesting... They have?
Honourable Makaleni, if you have a question, kindly direct it to the chair, please.
The question was, did they have apartheid in Hamburg? What they had in Hamburg was that they were totally flattened by 2 world wars. Flattened, flattened, flattened. And had to build everything from scratch. Now, I can't believe it. I mean, you know, sometimes the questions we get asked here are so extraordinary. Anyway, they also had a Holocaust there, but we'll leave that. What they have done, they have a port that is almost totally automated. And the thing moves cleanly and efficiently and with maximum precision and time management. And we are competing against this. One of the key reasons is that they operate on machines. So,
order. Honourable, sorry. Premier, kindly take your seat. Premier, kindly take your seat, please. Honourable Janki, may I address you? If I heard you correctly, you said, are we supposed to listen to this rubbish while the Premier was on the floor? Was it directed at the Premier? Honourable Janki, you would then have to withdraw and apologise.
No.
Because that is unparliamentary.
It is parliamentary.
Honourable Janki.
It's always been parliamentary.
No, Honourable Janki.
In this house.
The context, the tone, the manner within which you came in here, it's unparliamentary. I am asking you to withdraw, please.
Speaker,
Honourable David.
The Honourable Premier has been saying rubbish all the time. All the time. That's the word she normally uses when she don't agree. That's her language.
I understand what you're saying, but just the manner, the tone, and the whole way, yeah, no. So, Thank you, Honourable Dankie.
Madam Speaker,
Honourable
Madam
Dankie,
Speaker,
I did, oh, sorry,
he
Premier.
didn't hear a word I said.
I need to finish this. Just earlier on, I cautioned Honourable Chacham, there is no she and he in this House. We are honourable members. You are an honourable member too, so please manage yourself in a way that is honourable. Thank you, Honourable Dankie.
Honourable Premier.
Thank you.
I'm completely relaxed by the interjection of the Honourable Janchi because he didn't hear a word I said. He just came in and told me I was talking rubbish while he was still walking. So the bottom line is that unless we build an efficient and capable state, all of these dreams we have and that we fully support, and we're working like anything to try and create a foundation for a successful oceans economy, unless Portnet and Transnet up their game dramatically, we are not going to make any progress. And another point that, in fact, the Honourable Schaefer has made, who asked me this question, is the fact that it's well known that climate change is causing a lot of the ice that used to block the seas and sea passages in the Northern Hemisphere is melting away, which will open sea passages in the Northern Hemisphere, which will make it totally unnecessary for ships to come around the Cape at all anymore. And that will make our oceans economy entirely redundant if that happens. So what we have to do is up our game, realize that we are competing with the world's best, and if we want to turn every debate into a race debate, we must be prepared to continue with the total disaster of having 9.5 million people unemployed in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes questions to the Premier without notice. We have run out of time. Members, Honourable David, we have to get on with proceedings. I don't think we have to be subjected to this, please. We now move to statements. I've accepted your apology. Thank you. Next time, just try and keep it together. We now move to statements. I see the DA.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, the ANC supposed new election head, Mr. Brown Envelope Ibrahim Rasool, has called for the Bambanani volunteer program to be reinstated in the Western Cape to assist the police and law enforcing agencies in combating crime.
Order. Allow the member the time.
The program piloted by the ANC when it was still in government in the Western Cape was labelled, and I quote, a complete failure by the then chairperson of Proudly Manenberg and was disbanded as a result. In a memorandum handed over to the then Western Cape Premier, Lynn Brown, Proudly Manenberg stated that the volunteers were being exploited and victimized by the Department of Community Safety. The wages had not been increased and the volunteers were ill-treated. Cease, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The community wanted the project to be disbanded and the resources handed to the communities to start their own programs. This, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is exactly what the Western Cape Department of Community Safety did under the new DA-led government, having funded countless of neighbourhood watch organisations, which has been a tremendous success. If the ANC wants to try and take the Western Cape again, why is Mr. Brown Envelope Rasool proposing to reinstate failed programs under the ANC? Indeed, this is proof that the ANC seeks to bring back the very same maladministration and corruption to this province, with no new alternatives other than corruption, because that's what the ANC knows, Mr. Deputy Speaker. perhaps the ANC should leave governance in the Western Cape to the DA, because where we govern well.
Order, member, order. Member Mitchell, your last sentence, please. Your time has expired.
Proposing outdated and failed governance to our people, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is proof that the ANC is completely out of touch with the needs of our people and will take our province back, given half the chance to govern again.
Expired. Thank you. I see. Order. 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 Order, members. I want silence before I see the next member. The ANC, Honourable Member Nkondo.
Kubuhlungu umntana efundiswa ngamaqhinga, afundiswa amaqhinga abantu abadala. Honourable Deputy Speaker, lies and more DA lies. I'm worried about you, Mitchell. The DA misleads the public. Newspapers shout out as the Patricia de Lille saga continues. The Cape Town mayor exposed the DA in court papers that shows racist and sexist traits. And you don't want to learn that, you are still very young. Since the DA declared war against its former provincial leader, de Lille,
Order.
he has become that party's...
No, come patronize you.
Order.
Can I request your protection, Deputy Speaker?
Order. Just 1 second. I did not see why the member was standing up. Was there, Honourable Mitchell, was there a point of order, a question? What was it?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm rising on a point of order because the member is casting a direct aspersion on me because I happen to be young. How dare she?
Order. No, please come. Let's get back to order. That's not a point of order. That's a debating point. Member, you may continue now in silence.
Oh, Enkosi,
And I appeal also to your own members to calm down. Order. Honourable Makaleni and your group, please calm down.
Isimilo. Since the DA declared war against its former provincial leader, de Lille, she has become the party's biggest rival. In fact, the ill-considered and badly timed steps against her turned into the DA's downfall. It does not matter who wins. The bruised DA will not recover from the torpedoes it has taken under the waterline. The DA Titanic is taking in water and is going down. Mutiny and rogue self-appointed shadow captains on that ship cannot prevent it from disaster. While the spoil sport DA is doing its utmost to isolate de Lille, she is buoyantly coming back as she has the public understanding and confidence. The desperate DA fabricated fraudulent fake news against her, abusing the Auditor General's name. Shame on the DA. On a daily basis, the embattled DA shoots itself in the foot. As foolish DA bosses stick to their self-destruction cause, more DA leaders are hunted down and the fire is spread to other municipalities like in Bergrivier, Drakenstein, and DA provincial leader Madikizela stands with his arms folded.
Thank you. I see the DA. Honourable Wale.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Following the DA win in the Western Cape in 2009, the ANC said they did not recognise the DA win and the province would be made ungovernable. Project Reclaim was born, a covert project by the ANC to aim to destabilise the Western Cape. It concentrated on exploiting human weaknesses, especially among DA members and opposition councillors, using inducements and worse to force by-elections. The ANC would pour in limitless resources using national budget departments and to sway the voters and thereby swing the balance in the municipalities. Once captured, they strip the resources, often to fund the ANC, channel funds to pet projects and enrichment schemes, and create a home for cadre deployment. For the ratepayer, it was just neglected services and incompetent administration. If they did not topple the municipality, other methods included a starvation of services from national departments, creating dysfunction. Service delivery protests and strikes became the reality. Destabilisation became the norm. When the disgraceful document was leaked, the project died away, in no small part because of excellent DA service delivery. But it would now appear that Reclaim is back with a vengeance. it is no coincidence that a recycled but still disgraced former Premier Rasool has taken over the ANC election campaign. So in 23 days, in May, 39 instances of riotous behaviour and vandalism have been brought about in this province, destroying trains, houses, cars, power stations. DA councillors have been threatened and attacked. Little-known pastors and other unelected leaders suddenly champion community issues that lead to apparent spontaneous protests. Except that these protests are accompanied by trays of well-prepared Molotov cocktails and well-developed shields to ward off police ammunition. Well-rehearsed deployment tactics show that there's extensive professional training. Now live ammunition is being used against the state law enforcers. Daily reports of blackmail attempts, threats and financial inducements of hundreds of thousands of rands to councillors or to change sides are streaming in. Where are the intelligence services? Where are the funds coming from? Some say the Chinese are very active. We know that they love Rasool. We know that they are directly helping the independent media stable because they said they were going to do so.
Order.
Who is running the extensive social media campaign? Is it the Chinese and the Russians?
Thank you, member. Your time's expired. Order. Members, the noise level coming from this side, from the left-hand side, is too high. I want to appeal to you to bring down the noise level. If you want to speak to your colleague next to you, do it in a more peaceful way. I see the DA again. After the EFF is not here, I see the DA.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Focusing on our nation's future, economic growth, jobs, and education, which empowers young people, is important. South Africa needs to be a safe nation where our daughters can walk around freely, and that can only be achieved where we have a zero tolerance to corruption. Deputy Speaker, I'm saying this, highlighting this, because there are many negative effects of corruption caused in this country, like the Marikana massacre, and not forgetting to mention the Esidimeni tragedy. Deputy Speaker, to me, the worst is violence against women and children, including human trafficking. When I drive through Woosters roads during the night, I see girls that look as young as 14 years flaunting their bodies to men. Some of them are 40 years, even older. These are men who are dads, ooms, opas that have kids, nechis, kleindochters, the same age as their own. This breaks my heart and soul. I acknowledge that we all come from different family structures and we have to tackle different challenges thrown at us. It is now a norm every day to hear that a child is lost due to human trafficking, a baby is raped and killed, and a woman murdered and thrown into a dumping site. When will this stop? Are we a nation that forgot about the spirit of Ubuntu? Where is our men's moral compass? My plea to men in our province and in our whole country is to take a lead and to start saying, "Not in my name." These kids need to grow up knowing their value. You have a responsibility to be father figures to these kids and not be their clients or even their killers. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, the ANC. Honourable Bierwinkel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'll be short. The DA deceives people with unfounded claims of good governance and service delivery, while the experience of Western Cape residents on the ground is much different. In fact, service delivery protests are growing daily. Siklalo, Hermanus, Parkwood, Vrygrond, and everywhere else, dissatisfaction causes people to take to the streets. And the DA leaders are rejected as people realize that the DA in government is truly not interested
Honourable
in them.
Diana, you're interfering with the microphone of Honourable Bierwinkel. You may proceed, Member.
Nor does it care at all. A DA ward councillor for Bonteheuwel had protesters angered with his insensitive utterances and social media posts that backyarders and homeless people must get a job and buy their own homes. This happens against the grim backdrop of unspent housing allocations in numerous DA-run municipalities, amounting to billions of rand annually returned unused. and where Western Cape municipalities underspend and even lose allocations meant to assist the poor with houses, infrastructure and services. Here, the flagship city of Cape Town at 2 April this year had an actual cumulative spend of less than 40%. That meant that more than 4 billion rand was not yet spent or committed, even though the financial year was looming or is looming. Currently, there are rumors of 13 billion irregular expenditure, and then they fabricate Auditor General reports and falsify the Auditor General's signature. The DA is bad for local government, and its claims ring hollow when the facts and figures are considered. These service delivery protests are just stark reminders of what we have often said. The focus cannot solely be on compliance to laws and regulations and clean audits. Are you listening? Clean audits mean nothing. Public participation in municipalities is non-existent.
Member, your time has almost expired. Finish off, please.
IDP documents are compiled by consultants and budgets are finalized without the input of the people. And we know, but again, if you are prepared to undermine and discredit your own people, why would you care about the suffering of the poor to include them in public participation?
Your time has expired. I see the DA, Honourable Schaefer.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Donna Boyd, senior researcher at Microsoft Research, said, and I quote, "There's a fine line between creating an informed citizenry and creating a fearful citizenry. Indeed, the media's ability to objectively inform the public comes with a solemn responsibility to report truthfully and with integrity. And with this in mind, an article on the front page of yesterday's Cape Argus entitled 20,000 workers set to be evicted is nothing more than deliberate fear-mongering devoid of fact or truth. This story has the potential to create violent tensions between communities in the Drakensberg municipality. When the reported facts were tested, they were found to be untrue. How is it that a journalist can report so recklessly and without the necessary discretion? The definition of fear-mongering is the action of deliberately arousing public fear or alarm about a particular issue. We have witnessed this dangerous tactic in action by the ANC with Bell Pottinger campaign, which used fear-mongering to divide races around white monopoly capital and attack South Africa's social cohesion for political gain. It is inconceivable that the respected profession of journalism can stoop so low as to employ this very same tactic to the detriment of our people. Deputy Speaker, democratic society is only as strong as its independent, free and objective press. It is gravely worrying to see that journalists are using fear-mongering to sell stories. This type of behavior further drives polarizing politics, which harms our society.
Order.
The DA respects a free and independent press, but we must expect integrity and the utmost discretion from journalists. The well-being of our society depends on it, and we will not sit idle while fake news runs rampant. I thank you.
The ANC, Honourable Diana.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The DA lies to the public. It came to light this week that the colonial DA-run governments are not truthful about more water for the present drought. There is little relief for residents with looming inflated and punitive water tariffs, and the DA collapse continues. More ratepayers are fed up with the DA tricks, smoke, and mirrors they get. Even the Strandfontein plant burns more than R250 million for a 2-year lease, and it is not tested for pollution. The latest deception is the DA's urgency to have desalination installations by dodgy overseas partners, while local expertise is overlooked. Just read Wednesday's Business Day letter by activist Terry Crawford Brown, who slams the DA and its leaders for their having to steal from the taxpayer in order to line party pockets. Former DA caucus chair Rodney Lentet also affirms this. The DA must be investigated for corruption. The DA has no other plan for drought relief save the water security our national government provides. In fact, the DA still has to explain why desalination will only kick in by 2021, while other and private efforts are but a drop to the bucket. The crooked and useless DA should get out of government soonest. I prophesy.
Order. The DA, Honourable Wenger.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The history of policing under apartheid in South Africa was one of brutality, and it was characterized by a lack of accountability. At the dawn of our democracy, the Constitutional Assembly created an accountability framework for the police. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa and the following national and provincial legislation now provides for several oversight and accountability mechanisms over the South African Police Service. However, in this time, there has been an increase and a proliferation in private security, as well as private-public partnerships and several other forms of policing activity. In 2015-16, there were an estimated 488,666 registered and active private security officers. Private security guards now outnumber the SAP's 2.5 times. The activities and scope of private security has also evolved to include what we would consider to be traditional policing functions. Deputy Speaker, the changing policing environment has important consequences for governance and for accountability. Accountability, recourse, and safeguards against police service providers that act arbitrarily, with impunity or brutality, whether that come from private, public, or a combination, is important because public accountability is a key democratic tenet. However, Deputy Speaker, it appears that there's little in place for a public accountability mechanism for private security for non-criminal complaints outside of regulatory compliance. Many criminologists and those working in the industry agree that there is inadequate accountability for private security policing. This, Speaker, is very concerning as it comes at the cost of citizens not having satisfactory recourse and safeguards against harm and abuse from the private security sector. I therefore urge, as this province's legislative body, we look into this matter so that the necessary public accountability can be fashioned for the citizens of this province. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of member statements. We move on to notices of motion. Are there any motions where notice is given? Honourable Diana.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Motion with notice. I move that the House debates the doubtful effectiveness of water augmentation strategies of the Western Cape DA-run government. I so move.
Thank you. Notice is taken. Honourable Simmers.
Deputy Speaker, I move with notice that this House debates the recent maintenance and water loss report and the success of the Western Cape's ability to reduce its total water losses. I so move.
Thank you. Notice is taken. Honourable Davids.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Motion with notice that the House debates inadequate housing delivery for the poor under the DA in the Western Cape.
Thank you. Notice is taken. Honourable Nixella.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Order.
I hereby give notice that the House debates the successes of the Western Cape municipalities under the watchful eye of the Democratic Alliance, as announced by the Auditor General of South Africa yesterday, the 23rd May 2018. I so move.
Thank you. Notice is taken of that. Honourable Janji.
That the House debates instability in the Western Cape municipalities under the DA.
Thank you. Notice is taken of that. Honourable Safer.
I move a motion with notice that this House debates the fake news and fear-mongering prevalent in the Western Cape media and its effect on the residents of the Western Cape.
Thank you. Notice is taken of that. Are there any further? For the last time, are there any further under this heading? Then we move on to motions without notice. I see Honourable Simmers. Honourable Simmers first.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes and congratulates Essequa Municipality for becoming the first municipality in South Africa to commission a solar-powered desalination plant at Witsun. That the House further notes that this plant will produce 100 kilolitres of water per day, powered solely by solar energy, and will have an increased capacity of 300 kilolitres per day during the festive season. I so move.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Davids.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Motion without notice that the House notes Cape Town's Mayor
The law is working tirelessly to break barriers for affordable integrated housing in the inner city, following the announcement that she agreed to housing activism proposals to include a condition for the city and developers to have at least 20% of space for affordable housing into major developments like a 42-storage building that is set to be completed in 2020. Notes further that the 02 zone tower will be in the tallest Cape Sky scraper and appeals to the provincial government to include these conditions of affordable housing for all future developments in the province.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? Is there an objection? There is an objection. Will be printed in the order paper. Honourable Maseko.
They got me.
Order.
Deputy Speaker, I move that this House note and commend the South African National Biodiversity Institute's Christenbosch South Africa exhibit, which won gold at the Royal Horticultural Society Chelsea Flower Show on Tuesday. I commend Leon Kluge and Christenbosch Botanical Gardens for winning South Africa's 36th gold medal in the 43 years our country has participated. The exhibit is a unique display of indigenous Cape Fynbos with a vibrant township of Khayelitsha in the foreground.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection. Agreed to. Honourable, is there an objection? Yes. Sorry, there's an objection. It will be printed in the order paper. Honourable Beerwinkel.
Speaker, I move without notice that this House expresses its sincere condolences to the families of 2 learners who lost their lives in a horrific accident on Saturday on the Ashton-Swellendam Road. They are Sandiswa Mabichi, grade 7 learner at VRT Pitt Primary School, and Anisha Mabichi, grade 9 learner at Swellendam Senior Secondary. The 2 were cousins. The 3rd learner is still unconscious and in hospital.
I take it there's no objection to that motion being moved without notice. There's no objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that this House notes, commend and congratulate Minister Noma French Mbombo, the HOD Dr. Beth Engelbrecht, and the entire Western Cape Health Department for their efforts in reducing the HIV/AIDS and TB mortality rate. Further notes that between 2009 and 2013, this department managed to reduce the combined mortality rate from 8,849 to 5,999. During this period, the HIV and AIDS mortality rate was reduced from 4,662 to 3,534, while TB's mortality rate was reduced from 4,188 to 2,465. This is a clear demonstration of the department's commitment to addressing the effects of these diseases by ensuring that preventative measures are put in place and that access to treatment is also available. I so move.
Is there an objection? That will be printed on the order paper. The objection is against the fact that it's moved without notice. I see the Honourable Gopi. Honourable Gopi, you may proceed. Order. Allow the member please to proceed.
Deputy Speaker, motion without notice that the House notes with concern the alleged racism incident that occurred in Supersport Studios, which forced former Springbok rugby legend Eswin Williams complaining about being patronized and undermined by his 2 fellow analysts, Nick Mallet and Nas Botha. Notes further the widespread calls from members of the public for Mallet and Botha to be suspended pending investigation, calls for a probe of the vital privilege support domination by the Supersport and multi-choice, and commend the Sport Minister CASA involvement. I so move.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? There's an objection to the fact that it's being moved without notice. Will be recorded. Honourable Wenger. Honourable Mackenzie, I'll get to you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes with concern the worsening police-to-population ratio in the Western Cape from 1 officer per 385 residents in 2016 to 1 officer per 509 residents in 2018
Order.
and calls on the national government to properly resource police in the interest of safety.
Any objection to the motion? There is an objection to the fact that it's been moved without notice. Will be recorded in the order paper. Honourable Mackenzie, it's now your turn.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I hereby move without notice that this House congratulates Jaden Molanda from Mitchell's Plain on his selection to participate in the National Kumati Karate Championships and hope he achieves national colours. I also move.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Makaleni? Do you have one? Honourable Lekker, sorry.
I move that the House notes that police launched Operation Thunder, which will be carried out by members of specialized units to deal with crime and gangs in the Western Cape. Notes further that this operation is part of a national iron-fisted approach in which tactical response teams and tracking teams will be included to fight high-risk intelligence operation against cash-in-transit heists, armed robberies, gangsterism, murders, taxi violence, and political killings, and commends the subs and Minister Cele for this decisive move. I so move.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Kividu?
I'm sorry. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that this House welcomes the Western Cape 2017 NSC pass rate has increased from 82 to 0.8. Verskoon toch net, ek moet net bril. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. That the NSC pass rate has increased from 82.8% to 84.3% following the completion of the supplementary examinations in March 2018. A total of 933 candidates passed the sub-examinations, while an additional 105 candidates also passed their matric after successfully applying for remarks. Furthermore, this means that an additional 1,088 candidates have now achieved a national senior certificate for 2017. I so move. Thank you.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection. Agreed to. Honourable Beerwinkel?
Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that this House expresses its sincere gratitude to the Minister of Sport and Recreation, and also good to mention she's the first female Minister of Sport and Recreation, Minister Thokozile Kaza, and the Deputy Minister Gert Oosthuizen for hosting the opening of the Railton Sports Centre in Swellendam, built with a generous conditional grant for upgrading of sports facilities. We trust that Swellendam Municipality will adhere to the Minister's vision to use sport to transform and unite communities.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Davids first.
Thank you. Motion without notice that the House notes warnings that according to court papers, 20,000 farm workers is said to be evicted in the Drakensberg municipality. Further notes these heartless evictions regularly take place in cold and rainy conditions where people are left homeless next to public roads, and that all these people might end up in informal settlements, putting pressure on the towns in that municipality.
Any objection to the motion being moved? There's an objection to the fact that it's been moved without notice. Will be printed in the order paper. Honourable Gillian first.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House commiserates with the family and friends of 2 Overberg residents murdered in separate killings, namely Romano Low from Genadendal and Heineke Goliath of Greyton. I so move.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Joseph. Honourable Joseph first, then I'll come to Olivier.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that this House notes the incident last week where the well-known South African rugby Springbok walked out of the sports debate due to the alleged differences with his colleagues. Further notes that the management, after investigating, said it was not a racial dispute and called on the Supersport management to release the reason for the walkout of Ashwin Willemse. I so move.
Any objection to the motion being moved without... Is there an objection? No objection? Is there an objection? Will be printed on the order paper then. We move on to the next person. The Honourable Olivier, I said. Honourable Olivier, you may proceed.
Deputy Speaker, I move that this House that this House notes and condemns the latest stand. No, sorry, that's not the right one. Deputy Speaker, I move that this House note with concern the Western Cape school function was shut down after a group of girls were found passed out. Further notes, the learners attended a function at Immaculata High School in Wynberg on Saturday and were apparently drinking alcohol. Call on the Western Cape Education Department to note this as a warning of what will be the new norm in Western Cape schools if its bill is passed into law and allow alcohol to be served on the state school premises. Condemns the illegal presence of school functions and calls on schools to be more vigilant.
Any objection? I believe there's an objection to the motion being moved without notice. Will be printed on the order paper. Any further? Honourable Nkondlo at the back.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes with concern the death of more people in the Delft taxi violence. Notes further that on Monday morning, Nazim Daniels, the head of the Delft Cape Town Taxi Association, was murdered at that rank. Implores MEC Grant to urgently find innovative action to bring the war to an end and conveys condolences to Daniel's family. I so move.
Any objection to that motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. Motion is agreed to. Honourable Mackenzie.
Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that this House knows that tomorrow, 25th of May, is Africa Day. Wishes all on the mother continent a very happy Africa Day, and may we all celebrate our cultures and unite in our diversity. I so move.
No objection to that motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Motion is agreed to. Honourable Gillian first.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House conveys condolences to the family, friends, comrades of the stalwart unifier and Grabouw community leader, Mam Tembisa Koloba, who passed away. Hamba Kashla Umkhonto.
No objection to the motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Motion is agreed to. Honourable Mackenzie, do you still have one? Not. You're done. Honourable Klecker.
That the House notes with concern that gang wars in the province continue to claim lives of innocent people in communities, following the killing of 2 mothers in separate incidents in Ponteval and Eitzeg, which left 8 children orphaned, and the carnage of men, women, and children continues unabated. I so move.
No objection to the motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Bierwinkel.
Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that this House sends its heartiest congratulations to the 4 players from Railton, Swellendam that have been chosen for the national trials of the Homeless Football World Cup in 2018. This happens between the 24th and the 27th of May. We also thank our ACES Foundation for taking care of the players over this period. And the players are Rudy Peterson, Jerome Boy, Benedict Tite, and Yandisa Madolo.
No objection to that motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. The motion is agreed to. Are there any further? Honourable Janchi.
That the House notes raised discord within the DA led to yet another black mayor being targeted, as the DA now wants to remove Bergrivier Executive Mayor Evert Manuel. Notes further, this is the second DA removal since the adoption of the ill-considered and probably illegal Delil clause, and condemns the DA's protection of the likes of Premier Zille and Diane Kohler Barnett, by the parties controlling backroom boys.
Order, order, order. Did I hear the member say lies of the Honourable Premier? Did the member say lies of the Honourable Premier? Was that the word that you used?
No.
Oh, then
I can repeat. And condemns the DA's protection of the likes of Premier Zille.
The light.
Yeah, of Premier Zille and Diane Collar Barnard and the parties controlling backroom boys.
Okay, your point has been made. I misheard you there. No, any objection to the? There's an objection to the motion being moved without notice. Will be printed in the order paper. Honourable Casella.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I hereby move without notice that the House strongly condemns the irresponsible behavior of the economic freedom fighters and its leadership in encouraging illegal occupation of public and private land. Further note that these acts are tantamount to incitement of violence to cause harm, economic sabotage, and elements of espionage. I so move.
Any objection to that motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. Motion is agreed to. Honourable Gopi first.
Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes DA National Leader Muisi Maimane supported former Springbok rugby hero Ashwin Williams when he stood up against racist inferior, which Maimane said to be many South Africans still experience, and that racial superiority should be replaced by equality, and noting Maimane also opposed colonialism and historic privilege some right-wing elements in his party still cling to.
Any objection to the motion being order? There's an objection to the fact that it's being moved without notice. It will be printed in the order paper. Honourable Maseko.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I move without notice on behalf of the DA that the House extends its condolences to the family of Mr. Nazim Marab Daniels and the taxi community of Delft. I so move.
No objection to the motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. We will have a look at the motions moved. If a similar one has been moved before, that one will fall away then. We continue. Any more? Honourable Lekker.
That the House notes the Western Cape Police Ombud Vusi Pikoli has left the employ of the province on 30th April 2018 as he gave a month notice. But the Honourable Premier has yet to inform this legislature, notes the advertisement and other notices have belatedly been issued about his leaving.
Order.
Notes the Premier has various mechanisms to directly inform this House, like executive statements, and calls on this House to follow proper processes in nominating a replacement. I so move.
Any objection to that? There's an objection to the fact that it's been moved without notice. It will be printed on the order paper. Are there any further? Honourable Nkosela.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I hereby move without notice that the House congratulates the successes of the Western Cape municipalities as announced by the Auditor General of South Africa yesterday, the 23rd of May 2018. Recognizes that 21 out of 33 municipalities which were found to be best run in the country are in the DA-led Western Cape province, this province. Further note the many challenges in failing municipalities throughout the country, with irregular expenditure increase from 50% last year to 75% this year, accounting for a staggering 28.4 billion rands. I so move, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Any objection? There's an objection to the fact that it's been moved without notice, so it will be printed on the order paper. Are there any further? Honourable Magaka.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa announced he donates half of his annual salary for the charitable work to the Nelson Mandela Foundation and congratulates him for setting the example in the national government's Tumamina campaign. I so move.
I take it there's no objection to the fact that it was moved without notice and no objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Order. Are there any further? For the last time, are there any further motions? Order. Order. Do you still want to move on? Honourable Chacham.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to move that the House to congratulate and welcome the production in his quest directed by Mandla Mbotwe. In his quest embodies a continuation of a pursuit for meaning in Steve Bantu Biko's statement and mission towards a society with more human face. It tells of a yearning story to bring back Inkomo Zobao, to complete the liberation of black people. Isidima somntu omnyama masibuye. Mandla holds an MA at UCT. He is a senior lecturer and an artistic director for many plays. Mandla is a former student activist, former chairperson of TOSCO and COSAS.
Is there any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. The motion is agreed to. Are there any further? If not, then that brings us to the end of business of the day. The House is adjourned.